This story begins in the year 2045, where the soldiers of Earth are struggling to hold their front in the war against monsters. They are nearing the end of this battle, but the warriors are losing hope. Their will to see it through is faltering as their own blood stains the earth. Yet they still have their hero, Han Sung, the commander-in-chief of Earth's final defense force, standing strong between the monsters and humanity's fading hope. He kills these creatures with a single strike of his sword and hits bullseyes with every aim. His valor inspires his fellow soldiers. Han Sung moves onto the battlefield with grace and unwavering determination to save his people. This war has been going on for decades, and now, after endless battles, only a handful of monsters remain. Their goal is right before their eyes, but fate has other plans for the hero. A magic circle appears before him just as he is aiming at the final target, and it pulls him into another world. Before he can even understand what is happening, he finds himself bound in chains coated with magic. The hooded figures surrounding him express their shock at finally succeeding in summoning a hero from another world. As Han Sung questions where he is and why he is trapped in glowing shackles, an old man welcomes him by calling him otherworldly hero. The man immediately explains that Han Sung has been brought into this world to defeat a demon king and save them. When Han Sung raises his voice, demanding answers, the old man casts a spell on him. Oath of Restraint, which electrocutes him from the inside. He warns Han Sung not to resist, as the magic will not harm him if he obeys. As Han Sung reels from what just happened, the old man throws a sword at his feet and orders him to defeat the demon king and save their empire. In return, he promises to send Han Sung back to Earth. With no choice, the protagonist accepts. Once again, his life is dragged into another world of battle. He works endlessly, embarking on countless expeditions. He slashes again and again, fulfilling every one of the Empire's endless requests. 10 years pass. He sacrifices his youth for the sake of finally defeating the demon king of Valor. He can hardly believe he is so close to freedom. Every night, he dreams of what he will do once he returns home. But he could not be more mistaken about his freedom. The Empire keeps him overwhelmed with mission after mission. Whenever he questions his reward, he is reminded of the leash around his neck. He has no choice but to continue obeying their demands. For his last mission, he is ordered to kill Bedel. He obeys. As Han Sung stabs him, Bedel looks at him with pity. Han Sung apologizes, saying he had no other choice. Bedel smiles faintly and assures him that he needn't be sorry, because soon enough, Han Sung will be discarded as well. Han Sung doesn't understand what he means and dares to hope he can finally return home. That relief lasts less than a second. He is stabbed in the back by Count Brandenburn. The Count praises his work in Han Sung's dying moments, but makes sure he understands that he was nothing but a loyal hunting dog. The hero manages to point out that it was all a lie and that they were never going to send him home. The Count agrees and tells him they cannot let a hunting dog loose, as it only knows how to bite. Han Sung dies with a vow to never forget this humiliation and to make the cursed empire pay with its total annihilation. That night, one life closes its eyes, and another opens them. A maid congratulates her mistress on giving birth to a baby boy. As the baby opens his eyes, he sees a man with long black hair and tries to recognize him, completely ignoring his mother's joy. He finally remembers. This man is the continent's greatest necromancer and black mage, Duke Saxon. Then he connects the dots and realizes he is in the Empire's headquarters of forbidden magic, the Necropolis. Han Sung has been reincarnated as the Duke's son, and this does not surprise him. The Stone of Reincarnation, which can activate only once, has worked successfully. It was the one thing he had hidden away in his past life, a forbidden artifact he prepared to break the leash that bound him as a hunting dog. However, the body he would be reborn into was left entirely to fate. To think he has been reborn as the first child of the Saxon ducal family, one of the Empire's most elite noble households. He couldn't ask for a better position to prepare for revenge. Within minutes of being born, he devises a plan to master necromancy and wipe out every last one of those damned Empire traitors. But amid all these exhilarating realizations, he forgets that he has just been born. This leads to concern as his father, wearing a worried expression, asks the nanny why the baby is not crying. The nanny observes that he is breathing fine and cannot understand why he refuses to cry. His mother hands him to the nanny to check his condition, while the baby internally complains that tears do not come easily to a grown man. As the nanny assures them that nothing is wrong, the Duke wonders aloud. Isn't a tearless child considered an ill omen? The nanny repeats that there is no issue, but if he truly wants the child to cry, they can spank his bottom until he does. The boy is not one to accept defeat so easily. Despite multiple spanks, he refuses to shed even a single tear. His parents watch his stubbornness, and wonder if he has inherited the Duke's strong will. His mother takes him back into her arms and raises her hand to strike him again. The baby braces himself, only to feel a warm touch instead. The moment that gentle warmth reaches his skin, Han Sung recalls something. When was the last time I felt such warmth? The soft, trembling hands of the young noble lady, his new mother, radiate a love he hasn't known in years. Han Sung, who hasn't shed a tear since he was old enough to reason, finally bursts into tears. Han Sung is named Dale in this life, and 8 years have passed since he was born. One night, before going to bed, his parents discuss how he never puts down books and is always found in the library reading. His father, Alan, wonders if he is interested in magic, but his wife immediately reminds him of the promise he made. He asks if she is referring to the promise not to teach Dale necromancy. She confirms this and is pleased that he remembers. Alan reassures her and is about to tell her about the gift he has prepared for Dale's birthday the next day when a maid knocks on their door. He questions who it could be at such a late hour, and the maid rushes in, panicked, about young Master Dale. They hurry to see what has happened and find Dale on the floor. As his mother checks him for injuries, his father senses mana in the air. Alan is stunned to realize that, at the age of 8, the boy has already managed to release mana. He questions his son gravely, causing Dale to panic. But before Dale can fabricate an explanation, his father gives him a proud smile and acknowledges his power. He touzles the boy's hair and remarks that it is a shame he cannot teach him necromancy himself. Dale is surprised to hear this, but before he can say anything, his mother sends him back to bed. Dale's birthday banquet gathers all the nobles, but Dale dreads meeting people. In his past life, he had been treated coldly as a hero, and this sudden shift to being a noble feels awkward. He sighs repeatedly as he sits in his room, waiting to be summoned. While waiting, he cannot stop thinking about the night he destroyed his desk. He had simply been reminiscing about his past life as a hero when the mana inside him went on a rampage. No matter how much he thinks about it, it feels like a waste not to use the talent of his new body. He wonders how he can convince his father to teach him necromancy. He even considers asking for necromancy lessons instead of a birthday gift. After a while, his mother arrives, bringing him out of his thoughts. She wishes him a happy birthday as soon as she sees him, but Dale focuses instead on the person standing behind her. She introduces the stranger as an elder of the Blue Magic Tower and a master of water attribute magic, the enlightened demon Cephia. This person is here to teach Dale water magic. He understands his mother's intentions. She wants him to focus on defense and disruption magic and stay far away from necromancy. His new teacher approaches him and asks if they can speak privately. He agrees, and they take a walk outside. She begins by stating the obvious, that she was instructed to teach him only water magic. She then looks at him and asks if he is disappointed that he cannot learn what he truly wants. Dale is caught off guard and asks how she knew. She explains that it is obvious he would want to learn his father's necromancy, the magic of darkness. However, the conditions of the Noirduc's marriage are well known across the empire. When Lady Elena was courted by the Noirduc, she feared his infamy. To reassure her, he promised never to pass on his dark arts to their child. Even during their wedding, they wore pure white instead of black. Because of that vow, learning dark magic will be difficult for Dale. But Cephia promises to persuade Elena somehow, and asks Dale if he would like to follow her guidance. Dale finds this hard to believe because she is an elf, and elves usually value the laws of nature. He wonders how she can be accepting of black magic. She points toward the priests who bring the dying back to life and asks whether that aligns with the will of nature. Whether necromancy or resurrection, both are the same to her. Dale notes that she is not the typical narrow-minded elf and thinks she might be an excellent master. With their questions and doubts addressed, they decide to begin their lessons immediately. Cephia already knows that Dale has formed a fragment of his mana circle, so his goal now is to expand and complete his first circle. He is relieved to start, as most spells he has read about require at least a completed first circle. His training begins with placing a hand over his heart and concentrating. As Dale focuses with his eyes closed, he slowly realizes that this world is unlike Earth. It is abundant in mana. But unless one is an ancient being like a dragon, raw mana cannot be handled directly. That is why a filter is needed, known as a mana heart circle. One must gather the scattered fragments of the mana circle around the heart, assemble them, and make them rotate steadily. Forming a circle is like engraving a mana flow path into the heart. Cephia continues to guide him, explaining that it usually takes at least a month for the circle to form. But Dale opens his eyes and announces that he has already done it. Cephia is shocked. He has just begun training. How could he form a circle in mere minutes? She wonders if he is a naturally born prodigy. She then asks if he can release mana through the circle. He responds that he will try. Normally, even releasing mana through a completed circle is difficult for beginners. But Dale knows he cannot avenge himself with such basic ability, nor can he catch up to Duke Saxon that way. In his past life, he could only wield battle-type destruction spells carved into his body with magic engravings. This time, however, things are different. He has inherited the talent of the Noir Magic Tower Master himself. This body accepts mana naturally. Perhaps he can learn not only water magic but other types as well. He focuses, drawing mana in, guiding it to his fingertips, and forming it, the sharpest fragment to pierce the Empire's throat. Cephia watches as he shapes his mana into a weapon. She knows that normally mana collapses when released from the body, yet he is crystallizing it into a proper, complete ice bolt. Dale is focused solely on its form before releasing it, so he suspects its power may be lacking. But when he releases it, the bolt pierces straight through the wood. Cephia takes note of this with alarm. His mana possesses remarkable sharpness and solidity. This level of precision is far beyond what an 8-year-old should achieve. She looks back at him, wondering who in the world this child truly is. Cephia inspects the bark of the tree that was left from Dale's attack. She thought he would be at a level to move mana at its best, but it turns out the ice element had been included during the mana release. It was basic magic, but to think he'd display magic that absorbed the chill nearby so perfectly. She was lost in her thoughts when Dale called her nervously to ask if he had done something wrong. She just smiles at him, unable to form words after what she witnessed. The intricacy of the magic formula was far beyond something a merely innocent child could unconsciously create. Rotation, acceleration, congestion. The magic included the 3 formulas known as the golden ratio of military magic. Dale being able to unconsciously project and cast such a perfectly lethal spell is just. She turns to him again and reassures the boy that everything is fine. Cephia immediately goes to talk with Alan, the boy's father. She tells him she can't teach Dale anymore. When asked what she meant, she didn't answer. Alan stresses that if Dale reached the first circle within only a few minutes, then she should certainly teach him. She explains again. As soon as the young Lord Dale reached the first circle, he used a perfectly lethal spell on the spot. It was hard to believe that a mere 8-year-old child cast it. The military magic formula was used in its creation, and it was in the perfect golden ratio. She tells Alan with a grave expression that Dale is talented at killing. Alan also starts worrying, but he asks if she is refusing to teach him because she is an elder of the Blue Magic Tower who pursues nonviolence. She clarifies that it is not the case at all. If anything, she feels a strong urge to guide him to the right path with her own hands. Alan stresses, "Then in that case, there is no reason for you to decline." To which she answers, "The noir magic of the Lord Noir." Alan's face darkens. It seemed that Dale already possessed the magic he wanted to learn. Alan doesn't respond. Cephia continues, I've heard a lot about your love story. I respect the promise you made with Mrs. Elena, but that doesn't give you the right to decide your child's future. Especially if it's someone with such great talent as the young lord. Dale tries to hear what they were discussing, but no sound reaches his ears from inside the closed doors. He gives up and leans against the door. Even he didn't expect his first spell to show such power. He saw the surprised look on his master, and was determined to have more control over his power. Someone calls his name, and drags him out of his running thoughts. His mood instantly lightens up when he sees his Uncle Helmut. His uncle asks what he was doing outside the door. Instead of answering, Dale asks him where he has been. His uncle answers that he was away to fulfill his duty of protecting the ducal family, and lifts Dale into his arms with a huge smile, while telling him about defeating scary monsters. Dale asks if he has been in the dungeon. In this world, the emergence of dungeons or the overflow of monsters is a grave matter for any territory. Since the Demon King was still alive, monsters descending upon civilian areas have caused a lot of damage. That is why the knights of each domain primarily devoted themselves to clearing unexplored dungeons within the Demon King's territory, or eliminating monsters that had overflowed through dungeon breaks. In particular, the situation in the Duchy of Saxon is several times more difficult than in other territories. The reason for that is Han Sung aka Dale. After Han Sung defeated the Demon King in his past life, Duke Saxon was ordered to make the Demon King's territory into a territory of the Empire by subduing the monsters that resided there. In technical terms, this is called leftover dumping. Dale then cautions his uncle to watch out for himself. His uncle looks at him lovingly and asks if he was worried about him. Before he answers, Alan comes out. Helmut greets his master, and Alan appreciates his hard work in the recent dungeon raid. Meanwhile, Elena, Dale's mother, also approaches them. She immediately takes hold of her son to tell him how proud she is of him reaching the first circle. His father congratulates him as well, as if he didn't know anything. His mother encourages Dale to tell his father if he wants anything right away. He thinks about asking to be taught necromancy, but suspects it might seem cunning, so he blurts out that he wants a sister. This makes his parents blush. Alan assures him that they'll try their best. His uncle, on the other side, tries his best to hold in his laughter. Late that night, Dale lies on his bed and reflects that being childish at this age is just weird. He feels unusually tired, probably because of the magic he used. He falls asleep immediately after that and dreams of something terrible. The person who killed him in his past life greets him again. He points out that people really are sly, to grow soft this easily. He asks Dale, as he pierces the sword into his back, "Were you happy to have a great house and loving parents? Now that you are all warm and cozy, you don't think so much about revenge, do you?" He goes on to warn him that the people of the Empire will find him and end him until all traces of him are gone from the face of the earth. Dale wakes up with a start. His heart starts to feel like it is going to explode. He wonders if this is the mana rampage he heard about. He curses the Empire and walks out into the open to get some fresh air, but that only makes it worse. He doesn't know what to do or how to stop this. But thankfully, he is found by Cephia. She stretches her hand toward his heart, sensing danger. She manages to calm his mana down, but she knows that once malice takes over a child's magic, it will be irreversible. Dale is surprised to find the rampage has gone completely. Cephia then explains to him that the essence of magic is the mirror of his heart. That is the reason why each mage has different individuality, even though they might use the same magic. She also tells him that his talent in magic is taking other people's lives. It's a very dangerous talent. And that is exactly why she finds it fortunate that she'll be teaching him. She hands him a book, a necromancy magic tome. She says it may be fate that she'll be teaching him from now on, and then wishes him a happy birthday at last. For some reason, this makes Dale emotional, and he hugs her tight. She playfully teases him that he is a needy child. A few days later, for his training, Dale has to resurrect a zombie. Since he is new, he has to work with small animals like rabbits. He kills one with the same attack he used on the tree earlier. The tree was one thing, but Cephia notices that despite taking a life, his hands do not waver. She pushes that thought aside and tells him about mages. Even if it's the same spell, its form varies infinitely from mage to mage. She asks if he knows why. As he doesn't know, she continues, it's because one's magic is ultimately a mirror reflecting their mind. It materializes what lies in one's heart through mana particles. Therefore, magic inevitably reveals the landscape of one's inner self. She also explains that terms like firewall are merely stepping stones of imagination to solidify a mental image. Even the magic taught in the magic towers is no different. The red magic tower values order through strength. The blue magic tower values order through harmony. Each magic tower's philosophy is projected into the form of its magic. The philosophy emphasized by each magic tower forms the foundation of its magic system. Besides the red and blue magic towers, there also exist the noir, white, and green magic towers. Dale looks like he only half understands what she is saying, so Cephia decides this is too early a topic for him and continues with their training. Raising a zombie is the most basic form of necromancy. It is the art of animating a corpse using mana strings to control it. The head, spine, and knees, Cephia tells him to tie the mana threads to these parts of the rabbit. And he does it pretty easily. So she asks if he can move on to the next part. He is always eager to do that. Here comes the frozen armor. Dale has to gather the ice particles from around him and make armor on the back of the zombie rabbit. Cephia comments that his execution of frozen armor is quite decent, the form is proper. So they move to test its defense. Cephia attacks the rabbit to examine its strength, and Dale passes this test as well. His armor blocks Cephia's attack, which is pretty impressive for the first try. When Cephia looks at him, she notices that he is eager to ask something, and she permits him to say what it is. He excitedly asks her to teach him water attribute magic, too. She denies it immediately. She explains that what he performed today was a very basic form of water magic. But like all magic, the water attribute demands deeper insight and higher levels of understanding as it develops. For most beginners, even learning one type of magic is difficult. To handle two types simultaneously is someone we call a dual mage. Cephia makes it clear to him that at his age, it's nearly impossible. It seems like excessive ambition on his part to aspire so much. He didn't expect that. He thought she would agree after seeing how much progress he had made in such a short time. He still tries to persuade her by reminding her of her own words, where she said they are going to find their own path from here on. She dismisses him by ending today's lesson there. That night, in the study, Dale picks out all the books he can to study something on his own and prove that he can also be a dual mage, so that she'll have no choice but to teach him. The next morning, as the student and master head for their lesson, Cephia observes that he looks like he didn't get a wink of sleep. He tells her that he stayed up late to prepare for something, but she warns him not to overexert himself. However, the tiredness vanishes from his eyes as he begins to show her what he has been working on. He raises his hand and forms a magic circle to control the zombie rabbit again. Seeing this, Cephia comments that he has mastered it already. But he is not done yet. He makes the ice armor on the back of the rabbit explode and simultaneously explodes the zombie itself. Combining them creates such an explosion that Cephia has to pull up a defense wall around them both. This is an attack method she has never seen before. She also observes that, mixed with the ice explosion from the frozen armor, the corpse explosion attained a larger area of effect. And it doesn't end there. The ice and bone fragments are blasted out like blades. It's almost as if this magic is used only to kill, something a person who had devoted his entire life to the battlefield would use. She wonders, just what kind of form does this child's mental image take? They don't get a chance to discuss this as Dale's uncle, Sir Helmet, approaches them. Dale doesn't care much for the greeting and immediately asks his uncle the same question, if he just came back from raiding another dungeon. As if any boy doesn't love a nice and dangerous dungeon. His uncle answers that this time, they subdued a small group of monsters, and that the Black Cavalry had to put in some work. The Black Cavalry, wielding lances covered in aura, are the unrivaled cavalry of the Dukedom of Saxon. To add to this, their knight captain, Sir Helmet, is one of the 7 sword masters of the continent. Dale simply smiles and reminds his uncle of his promise to teach him sword techniques. Not sure what he wants to learn more after being in 2 battles straight in his past life, but he is just a kid excited to learn sword techniques from one of the best. His uncle obliges his wishes and parts ways after telling him not to stay out too long, as it is very cold. Cephia and Dale head back home, too. That same night, Cephia fills in the Duke and his wife on Dale's progress over tea. She tells them Dale has already mastered his first circle in necromancy and water magic at the same time. With a worried expression, the Duke reminds her about their deal to teach only water magic. However, as his mentor, she wanted to teach him whatever he wished to learn. She points out again that Dale wanted to learn more than just water magic. Elena breaks their conversation and requests that Cephia keep teaching him only water magic. Cephia agrees to it in words, but she has no intention of stopping the necromancy training. Elena is content that her demands were fulfilled. But Alan can't stop himself anymore and, with nervousness, tells her that he wants to teach Dale necromancy. He wants to give him the strength to withstand the duties of a lord and, at the same time, have a talented discipline as a mage. As his father, he'd like his son to inherit his legacy. He immediately apologizes to her for wanting to break his promise. Elena expresses her concern about how the public's perception of necromancy is still poor. People fear it and call it the magic of death. That's the reason she wanted to dissuade her husband. But surprisingly, she accepts his wish and tells him to train Dale to become a necromancer who can ignore others' perception of it. Alan is very happy to hear this and determined to teach his son the best he can. And so, their first day of special necromancy training begins. Alan tells Dale that he is very disappointed in him. That's because he has been reviving lives without even knowing what he was controlling. Dale doesn't answer but blames his master, saying she only taught him that much. They are currently in the magic workshop located underground in the Duke of Noir's castle. As soon as Dale showed his father the basic necromancy he learned, Alan clicked his tongue and brought Dale here. Alan points his finger at him and warns, "As long as I'm teaching, don't even think about using such a basic spell." Alan makes Dale memorize every bone structure of every life form to start their training. All the books Dale got from his father were professional books that only doctors in his world would read. After happily memorizing every letter from all those books, he is allowed to move on to practical magic. They both stand in front of a goblin's corpse. Seeing Dale's confused expression, Alan explains, "An untrained warlock can only make a sword master's corpse move like a zombie. On the other hand, a skilled individual can make an ordinary soldier into a death knight. In front of you is an ordinary undead soldier. How will you move it?" That is his question to his son. Dale starts to think. Unlike a rabbit, which is small in size and has only a limited number of bones, a goblin is much harder to control since it's bipedal and he has to tie it with many mana strings. He shoots his mana strings toward the goblin and finds it really difficult to control. It's like trying to control a complicated puppet. He questions his own method of using post-mortem rigidity to increase its defense. In doing so, its joints and muscles have stiffened, and now he can't move them. He has no clue what to do in this situation. Alan understands his confusion and places his hand on Dale's shoulder. He repeats the same issue Dale is facing, that using post-mortem rigidity has side effects when moving the corpse. Instead of explaining in words, Alan takes over the dead goblin and shows his son. It is amazing how his father controls it with ease. Alan then explains, "Rib cages are originally meant for protecting one's internal organs. But there's no need to protect the organs of the dead, is there? Understanding the target structure and altering it to one's needs is the foundation of black magic." Even after learning such a technique, Dale is not satisfied. He asks his father to teach him the mindset of the Noir Magic Tower. Alan says that if Dale wants to know the truth, it always exists within death. Therefore, He must understand the weight of life to reach the truth. This reminds Dale of how brutal he was in his past life. People begged him to spare their lives, but he was always too blood-driven to notice. His face flushes with that realization, and his father notices the shift. But Dale can't tell him anything, even if he wants to. So he just says he is fine, an empty word that means nothing of what it implies. As Dale's magic training progresses every day, the fact that Duke Saxon has taught Dale dark magic has spread throughout the Empire. Duke Saxon's breaking of his vow has caused a huge ruckus in the Empire. As for the person who caused the breaking of that very vow, he has garnered the attention of everyone in the Empire, including the nobles. And they're all focusing on Dale. A few weeks later, in the dukedom's training ground, Dale and his uncle engaged in combat. After a while of exchanging blows, Sir Helmut's wooden sword flew from his hand and landed behind him. He smiles and praises Dale, saying that his skills are not bad. But Dale knows that a knight like him would never drop his sword like that. He only did that on purpose. However, Helmut assures him that it is not the case, and with Dale's sword techniques, a normal person would have died in an actual battle. He also expresses his disappointment in Dale being a mage, given his swordsmanship. He walks towards Dale and crouches in front of him. Taking Dale's hand into his to tend to the injury he got, he assures him that there are always escort knights by a mage's side to protect them, and there's no real need for him to train this hard. But Dale is not one to back down. He says it wouldn't be cool for the Duke's son to rely only on guards or defensive magic. And another reason he can't let out is not losing the chance to learn swordsmanship directly from one of the 7 sword masters of the continent. Helmut is impressed with his answer and says that if he had a son like him, he would have no regrets. Dale is satisfied with receiving such praise from his role model. His mother comes to visit Dale and witnesses their high spirits. Dale immediately approaches her and asks what brings her to him. She simply answers that she wanted to see her son working so hard. Which is true, but her visit was a special occasion. She has some news for Dale. A gift, to be exact, which he asked for on his birthday. Yes. She is here to tell him that he can expect his gift in 9 months from now. The news of becoming a big brother was something Dale didn't know he would be so glad to hear. 10 months later, Dale met his sister for the first time. He was so ecstatic to have a sister. This is something he never experienced, even in his previous life. He sits with his mother and sister and revels in how cute she is. His mother asks if he would like to hold her. He is skeptical at first, not knowing how to do that, but his mother assures him that it is not so hard. His father also shares his experience of finding it not so hard after he first held her. As Dale holds on to his sister, his mother admires how the baby girl looks just like her brother. His mother also notices how the baby is so quiet when her brother holds her, but cries all the time when she is in her mother's arms. She does look quite happy being in her brother's embrace. Dale's father walks toward where he is playing with his sister and asks how he feels. He says she feels light as a feather, but also heavy. His father smiles at his observation and tells him, "That is the weight of life. Never forget it, Dale." Now he reminds him that it's time for his lesson and that Cephia is waiting for him. Dale reaches his training grounds, and Cephia tells him that today's lesson is real combat. Dale is excited, and Cephia encourages him not to hesitate and to come to her with all his strength. He casts his first circle and attacks her. His first strike is too slow. Cephia notices how he is going easy on her and strikes him with one of her own attacks while warning him to raise his barrier. But instead of that, Dale manages to form an ice armor on his hand and blocks it. This impresses Cephia. She tells him to attack her again. Instead of attacking, Dale conjures an ice wall. Cephia observes that by enhancing the mana structure, he dramatically increased the ice's density, which is pretty strong. But she couldn't understand his intention behind this. She wonders if he needed a break after that last attack. Before she can process her thoughts, the ice wall changes into a frost explosion fragmentation formula. She can't grasp what is going on completely before Dale detonates the grenade. He couldn't believe that it worked. The incantation just now condensed the sturdy ice wall even further than it already was and exploded using that. Since the ice molecules had already been strengthened before compression, it practically became a grenade. He was starting to feel proud of what he did, but when he finally saw his master's figure disintegrating in front of him, Dale paled. Before he panicked about what he must have done, Cephia came forward from behind her illusion, making him alive again. She was quite impressed by his technique. She never thought that a mere first circle mage would be capable of wounding an elder of the magic tower. Dale says he never meant to hurt her, with a worried expression. Cephia assures him that she knew that. She says she's actually grateful for the wound he gave her today. It meant that he trusted her with his full strength. As his master, it made her proud. She then asked how he came up with that kind of spell formula. He dedicated all of that to her teachings. Later, when Cephia was in the Duke's office to report on the progress, he asked how she got that wound. She says she was just careless and got it while teaching Dale. She also points out his formula being extraordinarily sharp. The Duke tells her how glad he is to have her, and that he is indebted to her for all her efforts. But Cephia disregards it as nonsense. Teaching a talented student like Dale is a joy for her as well. The Duke then asks if he can request another thing from her. They received reports that a group of orcs crossed the mountain range into their territory. It's nothing a small cavalry squad can't handle. However, the Duke intends to send Dale into this battle. Cephia argues that Dale isn't ready yet. He assures her that Dale will not be fighting on the front lines. Nonetheless, defending the territory is the duty of House Saxon. As the Duke's son, he must understand that responsibility. Dale is no exception to this. Now that she has nothing to object to, she asks what he needs her to do. Dale will be entrusted with an artifact, and the Duke wants Cephia to guide him until he learns to control its power. An artifact is an object imbued with immense power and will. It can only be used by offering either mana or your life itself as payment. The stronger the artifact, the more dangerous and uncontrollable it becomes. In some cases, it may even prove fatal. Alan, Dale, and Cephia are headed towards retrieving an artifact when Alan tells them, "The House of Saxon has long since mastered the art of handling such powers. Dale, as the Duke's heir, you must also prepare for the upcoming battle." Dale, when he heard this, was shocked and excited at the same time. His father tells him that he will be joining the subjugation force to exterminate the orc horde. Before that, however, he must first learn how to control the power of darkness that their family wields. They enter the artifact vault of House Saxon. It is so huge, Dale has never seen something so priceless. All of them are the Demon King's artifacts that the House of Saxon manages. They have had them since their ancestors conquered the Demon King's domain. Alan tells them to never compare these with ordinary artifacts. Dale observes that he can feel the intense mana radiating from them. His father agrees and tells him they all contain immense power and are extremely dangerous. Until he learns to control them, he has been warned not to touch anything recklessly. But Dale was not there to take that advice. He had already left on his own to explore. As he walks down the lane filled with dark mana, he is being called by each one of those artifacts to pick them up. But Dale was on his quest to find something that suited him the best. A shield stops him and says that it can sense his hatred and will help him take his revenge. But Dale doesn't bother with it much. Many artifacts tried to lure him with different strategies, but Dale was on the lookout for the best. He understands that these artifacts are resonating with his lingering resentment. But this is not enough. He needs something stronger. And suddenly, he realizes that there was a cloud hovering behind him. After looking at it for a while, he realizes that this is a shadow cloak. During the hero's era, Duke Berta of the Demon King's army used this top-grade artifact. It has the ability to give form to shadows, making him an incredibly difficult opponent to face. He picks it up to try it on. Before his father could stop him, he put it on and was dragged into an abyss. He keeps hearing someone say they are hungry. This isn't an ordinary shadow. The one who wielded this in the past could summon storms of shadow and move darkness, as if it were a living thing. To truly control it, however, the host must make the shadow creature completely submit. So he knew that this was not going to yield to him easily. But Dale is not going to give up that easily either. From the outside, Alan and Cephia were looking at a black ball that had just swallowed Dale. Alan is a little worried as it's been a while since it was used. If this continues, he'll lose his sanity and be devoured by the shadow creature. Cephia starts to worry too and asks what they are to do to stop this. Alan tries to cast a spell to drag Dale out forcefully. Before he could do anything, the black ball started to disappear, and Dale stood in the middle of it, unharmed. Cephia rushes towards him, asking if anything happened to him. But he was completely fine. Alan is in complete shock at how Dale is unscathed. How can a child endure such a powerful artifact? But he doesn't say anything. So Dale approaches him to ask a question he had. His father, too stunned to say more than a word, tells him to speak. Dale, ever so excitedly, asks if he can try on the others too. Alan and Cephia were dumbfounded. Anyway, his father approves. And so began Dale's exploration of the Saxon family artifact vault. Something that took all day and night. A few days later, at the ducal family's training grounds, Sir Helmut looks at Dale's cloak and asks if his suspicions are right. It was indeed the shadow cloak. He knows that the artifact is said to be incredibly difficult to control. He asks if Dale is all right. He replies that he only feels a slight prickling sensation and there's nothing wrong. His uncle is fascinated by his easy manner despite carrying such a dangerous thing on his back. Dale continues that the cloak might have been lonely, so the moment it saw him, it clung to him. He thought maybe the cloak just wanted to be friends. To this, the shadow reacts from under his legs. Surely, something that powerful would not accept being treated like a plaything. His uncle is just as shocked as the shadow when Dale calls it lonely. He says Dale is far too kind-hearted for his own good. Little does he know, if his uncle just looked a little away from his boyish expressions, he would notice him trampling the shadow with his legs. He was totally controlling it against its will. After this conversation was done, Dale requested his uncle. He wanted to have a real sparring match as combat practice today. Sir Helmut was more than ready to do that, and promised not to disappoint him. Dale had 2 reasons for that request. Facing one of the 7 sword masters of the continent might still be too much for him. His uncle looks at him and assures him he is only going to use basic swordsmanship with no aura. Dale is a little frustrated that Helmut was going easy on him. However, his true goal is not the duel itself, but to practice using the shadow cloak. The power of the weapon he can form from its shadow creatures will determine the artifact's true worth. And for that, this battle will be a necessary test. With that thought, he releases his first attack, Shadow Blade Rush. But Sir Helmut slashes that attack into pieces with no effort. Dale was beginning to see his uncle's strength for real now. For the second attack, Helmut charges toward Dale. But Dale is not just waiting to defend himself, he was planning a surprise attack. He created sharp spikes right in front of him. That stopped Helmut for a moment, but he rose above it almost immediately with another attack. But Dale's shadow had already formed a shield that was strong against his uncle's strike. Helmut was surprised, as he struck with enough force to break ordinary swords clean in 2. This is the difference between a regular weapon and a top-tier artifact. This excited Helmut, and he declared that they were going for 10 more exchanges. That day, the watching knights murmured in disbelief. No one among them had ever lasted more than 2 exchanges against Captain Helmut. They felt an indescribable wall between themselves and Dale. A few days later, on the day of deployment, Dale's mother, with his sister in her arms, came to wish luck to the troops. But she had an ulterior motive, to make Dale stay with her and not go on this dangerous task. She tried to persuade him, but he was not ready to be with his mother in the safe net. He assures her that his father and uncle will be there with him, so she needn't worry. Also, he tells his mother that he is going to bear the weight of the dukedom someday. When that time comes, he'll need the strength to protect his mother, father, and Lisa, his sister. So he pleads with her to let him go and gain the experience. His mother was touched by his words and finally felt confident enough to let her son into the wild world. He mounts his horse with a promise to return to her soon. The troops reached the temporary base, and they were ready for departure. Alan gives Dale the opportunity to order the troops to march. He says the black cavalry will be his one day to command, and they are his knights. Hearing his father say this was a huge thing to him. It also made him realize these are Dale's knights, not Han Sung's. This will be his first battle as their leader. And things are going to be different this time. He turns around to face his cavalry, and orders them to march forth. This is more than a child's daydreaming about his fellow men. This is a real battle with real swords that Dale is in charge of. For this operation, 250 cavalrymen and the elite ranger unit stationed in the White Mountains, the Winter Wardens, will be participating. Their target, roughly 1,000 orcs. The orcs have crossed the mountains, heading upstream of the Saxon River to escape the cold and hunger. They will move downstream soon enough. Dale's team will strike first by crossing the lower Saxon River and ambushing them there. There's only one way for 250 men to cross a deep river quickly. Just then, Sifia arrives and silently asks everyone to step aside. She will be forming a bridge of ice. She came all the way here for them, even though she emphasizes nonviolence and harmony. Within a few moments, a very strong ice bridge was in place for the soldiers to cross. As they head forward, she wishes victory to the Duke. Alan expresses his gratitude, and off they go. Dale says goodbye to his master and charges ahead. Sifia, on the other hand, feels strange that a student can make his master worry so much about him. Moments later, at the temporary orc base, the hidden range unit, Winter Wardens, launched their ambush. That took care of a lot of orcs. Helmut ordered the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Cavalry battalions to form a wedge formation and charge. Helmut, Dale, and Alan stayed up on the cliff and watched over their troops below. Helmut was content with this attack and asked Dale how he felt about it. Dale observed them for a while. With each horse's hooves hitting the ground twice per second, they were moving at least 40 kilometers per hour. Factoring in the combined weight of the rider and armor, the impact force would be immense. And with the 3 to 4 meter lances locked in place, that was the Kull Lance formation, enhanced with the Knight's aura. Even orcs wouldn't be able to block that. After analyzing all this, Dale replied to his uncle, "It's completely one-sided." His father agreed with that. He said this was the power of the cavalry corps, their duchy prided itself on. Helmut, from the other side, warned him not to relax just yet. This was only the beginning. The warriors kept fighting with their lives on the line. His uncle continued, "The ambush worked, but not enough to annihilate them. We'll retreat, reorganize, then finish the job with rotating charges." A blue light in the sky marked the troops' signal to retreat. Everyone turned around and left the battlefield. The orcs were left confused for a second, but they gained momentum and charged toward the retreating troops. One of the orcs aimed a lance at one of the soldiers, and it hit his horse. Seeing this, Helmut and Alan declared that one knight was down. Dale couldn't understand why they would say that. The lance didn't even hit the soldier. It was his horse that went down. He was very much alive. He turned to them and questioned, "Why are you just watching?" To this, neither the grown-ups had any answer. He analyzed that if he chased down on horseback, it would be too late. From this distance, he would need to pierce an orc's tough hide in one shot. An orc's skin was far thicker than that of other monsters. He would have to modify the ice bolt formula. Maybe adding a high-precision projectile formula for sniping would help, plus a ballistic trajectory equation for stability. Finally, he decided to increase the completion level. Ice bolt, Barrett M98B, 8.58 by 70 mm, Lapua Magnum formula. He released his attack and shot the orc straight in the head. Both his father and uncle were surprised at the accuracy, given the distance. Dale didn't stop there. He rushed down toward the soldier. Helmut tried to stop him, but Alan let him go. To think that at his age, he crafted an original magic formula. With that level of destructive power, his father thought that Dale's inner world must already be near completion. The other orcs were regrouping as Dale headed down. He was facing two problems now. 1. His body had frozen up in panic when he fell. 2. His original formula was too long and inefficient for combat use. That's when he took the universal simplification formula, A plus B, AB, equals A superscript 2 B superscript 2. Ice 98 Magnus was still too long. So he used just the ice bullet, and the orc was down. Just like that. The fallen knight looked at his young master and asked why he would do that for someone like him, with surprise and shock. Dale approached him and answered, "House Saxon never abandons a sword that's loyal." The knight was not ready to believe what he heard and saw. But two more orcs were rushing toward them, and Dale released his shadow blade to take care of them. The shadow enveloped one of the orcs, and after a few seconds, only the head and bones were left of him. He looked at the other shocked orc and shot another ice bullet. And it was done. The knight told him that his legs wouldn't move, so Dale ended up carrying him back in his own arms. I mean, how an 8-year-old could lift him is beyond reasoning, but anyway, he left the rest to his uncle and exited the battlefield. He ordered the cavalry battalion to charge ahead, for the House of Saxon and for young Master Dale. Soon after that, near the Saxon base, Dale and his father had a conversation. His father started by saying that they had completed the orc subjugation successfully. He called his son because he had something to ask, and that was to know why he rushed into enemy lines alone. He was angry when he asked, "Why on earth would you do something that reckless?" Dale expected many things, but getting scolded for what he did was not among them. Dale holds on to his calm instead of panicking at his father's anger, and explains, "You said the knights of House Saxon are those I will someday lead. I merely fulfilled the duty befitting that title." His father says his reason was weak. Dale knew for a fact that his father held his knights very dearly, but why was he acting this way today? Instead of justifying his actions, Dale questioned his father. "May I ask why you stood by and watched your knight die, father?" His father answered, "The northern king's territory under House Saxon faces constant hordes of monsters. The knights who take the front lines do not draw their swords, hoping to be saved." Dale doesn't agree with this and says he still hopes that his father should have saved a loyal knight. His father counters, "Like you tried to do? You made those who must think and act to survive on the battlefield believe someone will rescue them. How many knights with that mindset do you think survive?" Dale was speechless now. His father continued, "The knights of our territory sharpen their blades endlessly to face the threats around us. Only when they reach their limit will I personally stop those threats. That is the noble duty our house must bear." Dale understood his father's actions now. In fact, even he knew this from his previous life, but he had somehow forgotten it. His father then put his hand on Dale's shoulder and smiled at him. He continued, "The way you acted upon your will was quite impressive. Never lose that spirit, Dale." He obliges. It is now time to go back home. The tale of the young ducal heir who charged into a horde of orcs to save a single knight quickly became the Empire's favorite gossip. A messenger spread the word to the whole Empire. He spoke to the crowd, saying, "They said the little young lord had single-handedly cut down 1,000 orcs. Now we know that's an exaggeration, but we get how these messages spread. It spread through the Empire like wildfire. Although the person involved found the story embarrassing, this incident brought new energy to the duchy. A few days later, in the training grounds, the knights who were there to practice already cheered when Dale arrived. He only hid his face in his palm, unable to take the praise for something he thought was embarrassing. His face turned pink as he told them to stop doing that. But his uncle encouraged him to stand proud. He hailed the future of young Master Dale and ordered everyone to become stronger with the boy's inspiration. All the knights couldn't agree more. A maid arrived just then to call on Dale as the guests from House Orheart had arrived. He thanked her, and his uncle suggested they go inside at once. It seemed that they would soon meet a special guest. Marshal House Orheart. Patriarch Bardel, the Divine Sword, was once a great noble of the fallen Teutonia kingdom. But when the Empire launched its unification war, both the kingdom and the Divine Sword perished, House Orheart along with them. Dale observed as Helmut's expression changed subtly. He was probably remembering the divine sword, the man who guided him into knighthood. This might get uncomfortable. They arrived at the Duke's grand hall. Alan welcomed them and asked if Dale had trained today. He said he sure did. The guests arrived almost at the same time as them. A lady and a young girl walked in. Dale remarked that it was impressive of her to arrive without any attendants. The lady introduced herself as Vanessa Orheart, the young girl as Charlotte Orheart, and greeted the Duke. Alan welcomed them to his dukedom. But the young Charlotte seemed not as happy as everyone else to be there. Filled with spite, she stopped her mother from bowing to the Duke. Vanessa was startled by this behavior, and pleaded with her to stop saying such things. Alan didn't mind her rudeness and understood that she had gone through a lot to get there. He asked Dale to escort Lady Charlotte around the castle for a while. Dale extended his hand to take the lead, but she was too angry for all the niceties and smacked his hand away, shouting at him not to touch her. She then called the Duke and his family, shameless nobles, and ran out of the great hall, Dale following after her. Her mother apologized for her behavior and explained the reason behind it. Charlotte was usually not like this, but after recent events, her emotions were unstable. Elena, with concern all over her face, asked what had happened to the poor child. Vanessa explained that not long ago, Count Brandenburg, a new overseer, was assigned to their territory. He is known as the Empire's Holy Knight, so you must have heard of him. He's as infamous as he is renowned and is called the Pig King for a reason. They say that in order to produce a very talented heir, he seeks all the talented swordsmen, even if that person is Charlotte, who has yet to come of age. Vanessa said she barely escaped before he could touch her. However, one cannot erase the memory of such horror. Her mother wished to protect her, but as a fallen noble, her power was limited. So she was here to plead with the Duke of Saxon to take Charlotte as their maid, so that man may never lay a hand on her again. Charlotte ran off to the training grounds, and Dale asked if she knew where she was going. She replied that she didn't care. He wondered why she was in the training grounds of all places. He inquired about her hand, and she replied that it was fine and not to worry about it. Dale thought that if she was still thinking about what happened to her and understood that, however she acted, she was still a child. She was far from behaving like a kid when she pointed her sword at Dale and challenged him to a match. Dale didn't understand her behavior of doing whatever she liked. He didn't accept her invitation to the match immediately. He asked for a valid reason to duel with her. She said she had heard plenty of rumors about the incredible man who slaughtered 1,000 orcs alone to save a fallen knight. He imagined her words in a more romanticized way in his head. She brought him back to reality by saying she would defeat him and prove to be the strongest in the Empire, so that she could save her house from that horrible man. Dale was puzzled and asked who she was talking about. It was Count Brandenburg, the holy swordsman. Upon hearing this name, Dale's whole being shivered, not with fear, but with anger. He was the very person who killed him in his past life. To think he'd hear that name here of all places. He realized that they both shared the same target, so she could be an ally. But first, he decided she needed a reality check. He walked back to the barrel full of weapons and took a handy dagger instead of a sword. Commenting that she was nothing but a child who knew nothing, he called her to attack him with all she had. She charged ahead, saying that was her intention anyway. Obviously, it was no big deal for Dale to block all her attacks. And all the while, he observed how she deflected each attack, countering with wrist snaps, and even faintly using aura. She was channeling it to wield a rapier far too large for her frame. Just as a mage generates mana through the circle in their heart, a knight accumulates aura within their body to exceed human limits. She was indeed a knight down to her core. Since Dale was busy easily blocking her attacks and observing her moves, she thought she had the upper hand. She recollected her goal. When she was born, her father was no longer in this world. But every night, her mother told his stories. She said Charlotte had to protect their house in his place as the proud daughter of the divine sword. Even when their kingdom fell and their house crumbled, her sword never stopped. So she wondered why it kept getting stopped by this boy. She felt something was wrong. Dale wasn't even trying to make it look like this was a real match to him. Once he was done analyzing her, he simply knocked the sword out of her hand. She crumbled with that loss, asking why she couldn't win. Dale stated, without any mercy, that she was not the divine sword himself. Well, she needed that reality check. He said her pride as his daughter wasn't wrong, but as she was now, she couldn't protect her house from that man. She teared up at that. He reminded her that the holy swordsman's sword was tens of times stronger than it is now. That humbled her. She asked what she should do now. Dale turned around, for some dramatic effect, and declared, "I, Dale of House Saxon, swear on my family name to become the protector of House Orheart. Until the day you grow strong enough to defeat him yourself, House Saxon and I will be your shield." He lifted her sword from the ground and handed it back to her. She, oh so surprisingly, asked why he was promising that. He replied that her sword was worth it. He asked her to swear to become a sword for him and for House Saxon. She wiped away her tears and said, "How could I refuse that?" She took her sword back and knelt in front of Dale to swear her dedication. A bit over-exaggerated, don't you think, Dale? No, he doesn't. He knew it may seem childish, but the resolve behind it was strong enough to be called a vow. Oh, children! That day in the Duke's office, his father told him that at Lady Orheart's request, Charlotte became a maid of House Saxon. He was surprised at her acceptance without hesitation. He asked his son what had happened between them. Dale said they made a promise. "In the name of House Saxon, I vowed to protect House Orheart." His father gave him a side eye and asked if he used his house's name out of pity. He said no. Then his father asked what it was he wished to obtain from this. "The divine sword's only bloodline. Her talent is exceptional. We swore a new oath together. What I seek is a new divine sword that will be wielded for the sake of our duchy." I mean, how can he believe when an 8-year-old says someone's talent is exceptional? He is but a kid. Anyway, he appreciated his actions. Far, far away, in the old Teutonia capital, Malberg, a wine glass broke and spilled all the wine on the carpet. Count Brandenburg seemed to be shouting at some person who was hiding under a hood. Apparently, he had sent someone to capture Charlotte, but they failed. The hiding man apologized, as they had sent some assassins, but they were killed. He also suspected that Charlotte Orheart herself fought them off. Brandenburg turned around, disappointed, and headed towards the shining sword on display. He lifted it as his precious baby and recollected how he killed Han Sung, aka Dale, in his past life. With the same pleasure, he convinced himself to wait on his self-declared fiancée, so that he could get the perfect heir to inherit whatever he wanted. He ordered the hiding man to contact the Thieves' Guild and send men to the Duke's territory. He wanted them to pay whatever they asked and bring Charlotte, that wretched girl, as he called her, to him. It's been a year since Charlotte swore her oath of servitude. After adjusting to the ducal residence, she endured intense maid training and made sparring with Dale part of her routine. It is now time for practice. Helmut himself is overseeing their training. Today, as they duel with each other, Helmut couldn't help but question if this is a duel between children. They aren't on par with knights yet, but their killing intent and speed are remarkable. It was not just a saying, they were actually fighting to kill each other. So Helmut stopped them before something fatal occurred. He gives them a compliment, but Charlotte is not one to take pity compliments, so she demanded to know where she was lacking. To this, Helmut asked if she knew the essence of the rapier. Her answer was thrusting, but that was not exactly right. The true essence lies in footwork, he points out to her, 2 legs. While Dale evaded your thrust, he simultaneously closed the distance. At that point, you should have widened the gap and waited for an opening. The more you bend and extend your arm with a rapier, the more your blade shakes and your thrust loses precision. You'll need to rebuild your basics from the ground up. She was just too embarrassed to know that she was lacking the basics. But Helmut doesn't care about that and continues. I've noticed this for a while now, but your posture and footwork are unrefined and unconventional. But she never had anyone to teach her before. Helmut, instead of making her comfortable, suggested he would fix that bizarre thrusting stance of hers and laughed in her face. Looking at her angry red face, he said he was just joking and couldn't help it, as she looked so cute. Dale had his own set of thoughts running in his mind during this time. He wondered how fast she would grow under the tutelage of Sir Helmut, one of the 7 sword masters of the continent. If he doesn't push himself, she might catch up to him soon. The process of constructing mana circles is mostly the same. One senses the flow of mana circulating through their heart, waits until it follows a stable path, and then engraves that pattern into their body as a mana ring. The problem is that it can take decades. But Dale has already done it, and he has also completed forming the second circle. In this world, a mage's mana circle is measured in RPMs, the rotations per minute of mana flow. A typical first circle mage has around 300 revolutions per minute. At present, Dale's first circle measures 2,000 revolutions per minute, while his second circle is at around 400 revolutions per minute. To expand a new circle, the minimum is 300 revolutions per minute, meaning he already met the requirement for the third circle. Since he attained the second circle, Dale wanted to run an experiment. He tried enhancing the existing ice bullet, strengthening the molecular bonds to increase its mass and hardness. Then, he projected a large caliber barrel to boost rotation and velocity. The next level of his ice bullet is a piercing bullet. He shot the bullet through a tree bark, and it ran through it, making a hole instead of completely shattering it like the last time. It was too easy to be true, but maybe the influence of an additional circle is too significant, he thought. Cephia complimented him, saying he always learns fast. He thanked her in return for all the teachings. She reflected on how, from saving a knight from an orc horde to what happened with Charlotte, he always uses his strength for the right reasons. He scares her sometimes, but he inspires even greater trust. She gently embraces him and lets him know that he truly is her proud student. Dale was uncomfortable with her over-the-top physical contact sometimes. He continued to practice with his second circle and raised a wall of ice, then released an ice bullet, 12-gauge 00 buckshot. The bullet split into small balls midway and hit several different spots on the wall before bouncing back toward him. He raised a protective shield to block them. This was satisfactory enough, so he planned on trying to adapt it into a slug round next time. Charlotte appears suddenly and observes where he's been practicing all this time. She was also here to practice the footwork Sir Helmut taught her. They talked generally, and it looked like Charlotte wanted to say something. After a pause, she apologized for her rudeness earlier and called him young master. Instead of denying like a gentleman, Dale only confirmed that she was a bit rude, but forgave her anyway, and told her not to be so formal with him. They stand under the tree for a while, talking about the weather. Charlotte says she liked the weather here, as she can swing her sword till night, and the air always keeps her cool. Dale is glad that someone feels the same as him. Alan and Elena looked upon these kids from their window and reflected on how fast time goes by, as Dale is of that age. They discuss how perfect they look together, and decide to keep an eye on them. Elena decides on what she must do now. It's a mother's duty to lead her son, so he can be true to his feelings. Not long after, at the outskirts of the dukedom, the city of slums, where beggars and the homeless line the streets. It is here that Dale's mother is providing relief. Every week, she provides food and necessities and helps arrange work. Starting this year, Charlotte and Dale also began working with her. As they were distributing the goods to the beggars, a small kid dragged Charlotte to the side and begged her to come with him. He claimed his mother was in danger, so Charlotte followed along immediately. Dale went along as he was sure something was incredibly suspicious. They left their escort knights and were traversing a complicated network of alleyways. The fact that the request was made not to any adult but to Charlotte was suspicious to begin with. He looks around and sees a man on top of a building and knows he is from the Thieves' Guild. His suspicions are right. The Holy Swordsman sent these people to capture Charlotte. The boy left them, saying he'll bring his mom out. Classic work there. The thieves surrounded them immediately. They inform them they only have business with the little lady and suggest Dale leave, warning that if he acts out here, he might get hurt. Dale utters a pledge, I, Dale of Saxon, swear to protect the daughter of Orheart. He's too dramatic sometimes. The thief tells him to consider the situation before being chivalrous. LOL, that's true. He assures Charlotte not to relax and plans on testing the Shadow Cloak's new technique under the guise of self-defense. Almost everyone charged at him at once. Dale made his cloak work for him. All of them were too foolish to understand what was happening, so their leader had to shout at them to dodge. It is the new Shadow Cloak technique Dale discovered after reaching the second circle. By implanting shadow creations like parasites, they move on their own to inflict undeath. All of them barely escaped, except one. And that one person became an undead. The leader ordered his men to kill the undead, and he went after Dale. He circled him so fast that he was barely visible. The thief thought no one could possibly block his aura-infused assassination techniques in these alleyways. But Dale did it without lifting a finger. His cloak did the blocking, and his buckshot pierced multiple holes in that thief. He still didn't die, as he is an aura wielder, and they are really sturdy. He attacks Dale again. This time, his cloak takes care of him by slicing him up. On the other hand, the undead took care of the rest of them. Dale went in the direction where Charlotte was and asked if she was okay. The thief pieced together his parts and tried to throw a knife in their direction, but Dale shot a bullet into his leg, so he tripped. He called back the undead into his cloak and walked toward the leader, who was currently begging him to spare him and promising to tell everything he knew. Dale just shoots him in the head, as he was not interested in anything. Charlotte looks around, astonished. Dale confirms that this is the face of House of Saxon that people fear. It's also the power that will protect her. He asked how she felt about all of this. She is a little afraid, but it's okay. As Dale fought to protect her as a shield, she vowed to become the sword that swings for Dale's sake. She then thanks him for teaching her what the future means and determines to become stronger. Part of the reason Dale took Charlotte in was out of guilt for what happened to Sir Bardell 24 years ago. That's why Charlotte's decision to become Dale's sword held far greater meaning than Dale himself realized. Meanwhile, at Count Brandenburg's estate, he received a letter from the leader of the thieves whom Dale had just killed. The letter was from the Duke of Noir. I know this will be a difficult visit, Count, but I must invite you to the Saxon Duchy. I beg you, out of respect for our sincerity, not to refuse this invitation. This is the Noir Duke's summons, issued to demand accountability. Even the great holy swordsman cannot refuse this order. A few days later, Saxon Ducal Castle. Alan appreciated the Count for coming all this way, even though he warned him that there was no choice. Although he didn't expect him to arrive this quickly, he apologized for the humble welcome. The Count placed his hand on his heart, and said there is nothing more important than his Grace's call, and envied the little bastards who were standing beside Alan. The Count continued, After the commotion at the ducal estate, there's great concern spreading throughout the empire. A kidnapping in broad daylight, of all things. I believe I can guess why you called me here. But Alan was speechless. To think he would deny something like this. Anyway, he still tried to defend himself, saying a loyal word that he would never be involved in something like that. Alan is beyond words. He lifts his hand and releases dark magic, which devours everyone except the Count. Even the Knights of St. Magdalene couldn't resist. This magic is the advanced dark magic Tempest of Nihil. The Duke doesn't take back the magic fully and orders the Count to kneel in front of him. The Count warns him that what he is doing could end badly. But he is the Duke. He calmly suggests that he listen carefully, and that the Count will not get another warning. Even though the Duke has justification on his side, the Count did not expect him to go this far, and he kneels. Alan tells him that he called the Count for the sake of peace. But if you dare to lay a hand on the children of House Saxon again, I will wipe out every last member of House Brandenburg. I ask you from the bottom of my heart to embrace this. He then tells the Count to rest and warm himself up, as he might be tired from the journey. The Count appreciates the generosity but makes an excuse to leave the duchy immediately. So Alan bids him a safe journey. What Alan showed to Count Brandenburg, one of the Emperor's most loyal retainers, will become the spark that sets the entire empire ablaze. It begins as the smallest ember, but it won't take long for that fire to spread. It will become their duty to cut down the holy swordsman. When the world hears that the holy swordsman was forced to kneel before the Marduk, the empire's core will be shaken. Later, in the Duke's office, Alan uncovers something in front of Cephia. Those are the corpses of members of the Thieves' Guild who attacked Dale. He tells her that all of that was done by Dale himself. She was utterly shocked to hear that. Corpses torn apart, riddled with holes, with their insides spilled out. For the first time, Cephia began to doubt herself. Perhaps her teachings had been wrong. But Alan had other plans. He says, "As you can see, guiding Dale's extraordinary talents in the right direction will require your wisdom, Lady Cephia. I would like to offer you the position of chief advisor." In other words, he was asking her not just to remain as his tutor, but to become part of House Saxon itself. Alan continues, saying that Dale depends a great deal on her. And his own strength is not enough to train him, so if she lends a hand, things will change. She accepts, understanding how that child sees the world is her most important task. Time passed, and the day of Dale's 10th birthday arrived. Unlike last year's celebration, this time, even envoys from the Emperor's court attended. Among them, the most notable guest was Marquis Uris. A while ago, the guests were found admiring the arrangements by House Saxon, and they couldn't believe that they were in the midst of the Northern Territory, which is usually known as the scariest place. The central nobles of the imperial capital, the so-called Emperor's faction, formed the largest and most influential power bloc in the empire under the name of the Emperor. The reason they've come to tonight's banquet is obvious. It's an implicit warning, a message from the imperial family that they won't overlook any insult toward the holy swordsman. Now, the messenger chosen to deliver that message most unmistakably is standing right before Dale, Lorne Crimson Marquis Uris. He's the master of the Red Tower, a man who pursues flame, fury, and power through order. The Red Tower's mages were infamous for their obsession with the belief that the strong are the righteous of the Empire's era, and so they never hesitated to become executors of ambition. Dale himself had once been subjected to all kinds of modification experiments by the mages of the Red Tower. Uris extends his greeting and addresses Dale as the genius prodigy of House Saxon. "I've heard you possess unmatched talent in magic that none in the entire empire can compare to. Rumor even says that, to protect your family's knights, you single-handedly wiped out a horde of orcs. As expected of his grace's son." To this lengthy speech, Dale only smiled, wished him to enjoy the party, and left from there. Every year, being celebrated like this for his birthday had started to feel exhausting to Dale. Honestly, he'd be better off training with Charlotte. But she officially serves as Elena's maid. Besides, if word got out that the daughter of the Divine Sword was sparring with him, it could be dangerous for her. So he plans on practicing alone. While walking the grounds, he heard someone scream. A man was forcing himself on a maid and trying to abuse her. As everyone was busy celebrating the young master's birthday, he thought he could get away by enjoying his time alone with a woman. He pointed a dagger and warned her to stay still, or he'd slit her throat. Dale arrived before he could harm the maid. The man was surprised to see Dale himself there. Dale demanded to know what brought this man here, but the man had no shame and talked about showing how good a company it is to be alone with a woman, to a 10-year-old kid. He thought, since it was only a kid, he could get away with toying with them both. But Dale aimed his ice bullet and shot at him. He did not aim to kill, but to provide an opening for the maid to escape. In a world built on hierarchy, no one would have imagined he'd be the one attacking. But Dale had no intention of stepping back, even though defying the Emperor's people isn't exactly the smartest move. When the man questioned his action, Dale ordered him to kneel before him. The man was stunned, but Dale shouted again for him to kneel and apologize to Eve, the maid. But the man refused and told him that he was here today as a representative of His Majesty himself. To insult him for defending the honor of a low-born maid, he claimed, was tantamount to insulting the Emperor. But Dale countered. "Tell me then, Does His Majesty enjoy violating servants from noble houses for sport? The man was shocked at his words yet again. He began to threaten Dale when his father and other members of the family arrived. But Dale wasn't having it, and he ordered the man to kneel again. Yuri's was also there now, commenting on how the events had turned. Alan demanded to know what was happening from his son. Dale explained. This man attempted to assault one of House Saxon's maids. His father questioned if that was the only reason he had disrespected Lord Petro, to which Lord Petro started to stand and explain. Dale wasn't afraid of anything and shouted at the man, asking if he had been told to stand. He continued cleverly. Our honored guests from the capital are all entrusted with the great duty of acting in His Majesty's stead. Yet this man sought to defile a mere maid, tarnishing His Majesty's name in the process. Therefore, I could not stand by and allow Lord Petro's disgraceful conduct to go unpunished. Yuri's came forward and admired Dale's cleverness in the situation, but acknowledged that he was speaking the truth. He punished Lord Petro himself. Lord Petro tried to escape but was burned to ashes by Yuri's power. Then Yuri went ahead to talk to Dale. You spoke nothing but the truth. Purging worms who dare insult the Empire and the Imperial family is my duty. I look forward to your future, young Master Dale. With those words, Yuri's left. The commotion died down. The Emperor's people departed, and peace returned to House Saxon. Later, one morning, Eve came to wake Dale. He thanked her, but she didn't leave, so he suspected she had something to say. Indeed, she wanted to thank him for what he did on his birthday, and said it was truly an honor for someone like her to serve him. But he wondered if that was all she had to say. He had lived in 2 different worlds and was still unfamiliar with this feeling. He would have to get used to it. He thanked her for the compliment, and thought that, as the eldest son of House Saxon, he understood the weight behind a name, and he planned on using it however he could, if it brought down the Empire. He was called to the Duke's office. His father acknowledged that Dale was clever, but said his behavior lately was raising suspicion. He asked why that was. Dale explained. Did you know? If the otherworldly hero had not died in the battle with the divine sword Bardel, then the next place the hero's sword would likely have been wielded was in the Saxon duchy. His father grew furious at this claim, and asked how he could be so sure. He had heard in his past life that the Empire was plotting against House Saxon. The Empire abandoned the hero. They feared what would happen if the leash around their golden prize snapped, and their hunting dog ran rampant. So he explained. Even though the otherworldly hero defeated the Demon King, the Empire did not root out the darkness of the Demon King's domain. Instead, they issued absurd orders to cultivate the Demon King's land into imperial territory, and unilaterally demanded sacrifices from our house. They even bestowed that land upon you. As long as the darkness on that land isn't fully cleansed, our bleeding will not stop. Moreover, the people inside the Empire and beyond the northern borders point at us, House Saxon, and call us the Clan of Darkness. Just as they abandoned the hero, they will try to remove internal risks, those who might threaten them from within. His father asked how he could say that they abandoned the otherworldly hero. He replied that these were mere deductions and reasoning he made from the records he had read. Logically, he said, it made the most sense. Officially, the hero met an honorable death after a fierce battle with the divine sword Bardel. But only a few knew the truth. Dale continued. If my theory is right, the Empire is simply an oppressor that seizes weak nations by force. His father looked at him, and realized his wisdom was beyond his years. So he asked what Dale proposed they do going forward. Dale, without hesitation, said they must destroy the Empire. His father's eyes widened. He gravely asked, Do you even know what you're suggesting? Even that didn't scare Dale. He continued with the same confidence. I'm not saying we should raise the army and revolt right away. 10 years from now. His father was puzzled. Even now, said Dale, resistance groups across the continents push for independence. There are vassals like you, Duke Saxon, who fear the Empire turning its blade against them. The economy is shrinking, banditry increases daily, and though the 7-continent unification ended, the after-effects of war have only worsened. By then, we will have built the strength to protect our house against the Empire. We will support resistance forces operating in various regions and... He continued to explain his plan to take down the Empire until the sun set. Then he asked for his father's thoughts on all that he had said. His father was truly impressed, as his boy could perceive sights even he could not see. He was proud that Dale was his son, and from that day on, he declared that Dale was no longer merely the Duke's eldest son, nor would he be a mere 10-year-old child. He would treat Dale as his heir, who would one day lead House Saxon. As the head of the house, he also promised to listen to Dale and respect his words in all matters. Dale had been waiting for this day since he was reborn, the day when he finally gained the authority to move the power of House Saxon into his own hands. His father asked him to speak without hesitation about the decision he was going to take now for his family. So Dale asked for permission to take the Tower Trial in the necropolis. The Tower Trial, it's a sort of game to decide one's rank among the mages, where they face the guardians of the magic tower. Defeating higher-ranked guardians raises one's standing, and the strongest of all earns the title Tower Elder. The one at the very summit is granted the title Magic Tower Master. His father asked if he truly wished to take part in this dangerous task and risk his life, as it was far too early for him to do that, and he had not even completed his third circle yet. Dale said he would achieve that soon. But usually, the third circle is only possible in one's mid-20s. Even for someone like him, who had already achieved his second circle, that would be difficult. To this, Dale replied that this was for both him and House Saxon. His father asked why that was. If I prove myself through the Tower Trial, my status as your heir will solidify your position, and I will obtain a form of reputation that is trustworthy, not one built from rumors spread by gossip. His father asked if he wished to use the Tower Trial for that reason. He said yes. And that was that. A few days later, in the City of Death, Necropolis, everyone was waiting as the Duke and his son arrived at the location. As they welcomed the pair, Dale was seen yawning. According to him, it was probably because he had pushed himself too hard again. People start gossiping about the unprecedented genius that Dale is. Boys from the academy begin gossiping. One says it's a joke that Dale's swordsmanship is on par with the knights of the Duke's household. Another behind him declares, I, Vilik, top graduate of the academy, am the one destined to win this Tower Trial. Someone else says Dale looked like he would fall if someone just tapped him. A lady in a white suit with short hair greeted the Duke and his son at the entrance. The Duke returned the greeting to the lady. She is heiress, elder of the tower, and Secretary-General overseeing all administrative duties in the absence of the Noir Duke. Alan tells Dale that she will be assisting him during the trial. They both entered the tower, where 59 other participants were waiting. Eris was now standing on the first floor facing the participants. She introduced herself, and explained the steps and rules for the trial. She asked them to check the necklace around their necks and gave them instructions. This trial is Battle Royale style. A life point battle. Each necklace contains a shield spell that protects you. When you land a valid hit on an opponent using the corpses scattered across this field, the opponent's necklace activates its shield spell and shatters, meaning elimination. The attacker who lands a valid strike gains 1 life point on their necklace. The participant whose total score reaches 3 points will advance to the next floor. Lastly, anyone who uses artifacts will be disqualified for cheating. Dale listens to this and feels like it's a quick and easy way to wipe out the rookies. But a couple of academy students approach him and comment on Dale achieving the third circle already at his age, saying they have to take down this monster first. The trial began. Everyone started controlling the undead and attacking their nearby competitors. More than one student attacked Dale at the same time, but he stood still without panicking. He had already controlled his own undead and started using them as his shield as well. Dale used water magic on one of the opponent's undead and smashed it to pieces. The student who was controlling it put 2 and 2 together and realized Dale was a dual element mage. Another one attacked him from behind, but Dale's undead shielded him with ice armor on its back. Then Dale's undead turned around immediately and smacked the attacker's undead right across the face. One other student pointed out that using water element spells counted as breaking the rules. He argued that only necromancy and magic that controls the undead were allowed, and all other forms of enhancement were forbidden. But Dale explained that there was no rule saying he could only strengthen the undead with dark magic. Besides, the fact that the trial hadn't been stopped meant he was right. That angered the opponent, but he couldn't do anything. So they tried to overwhelm Dale with numbers. Since using an artifact was banned, Dale had no choice but to use his other skill. He dashed toward an undead that was carrying a sword. As the sword swung at him, he stopped it with just his right hand and infused mana into his left to punch the hell out of that undead. Now he used the sword to defeat all the other undead. The other students also noticed that Dale reforged the simple bones sword to increase its durability. He kept going, one after another. The students couldn't believe their eyes, as a mage shouldn't be able to use a sword that flawlessly. The last opponent begged for forgiveness and promised to surrender. Dale replied that it wasn't like he was going to kill him, but just the necklace around his neck. Naturally, he was the only survivor with 60 life points. He was relishing in the attention, as this was his first step forward. For the Tower Trial's second tier, the test is to defeat the guardian creation known as a flesh golem. Normally, surviving candidates from the first tier cooperate with one another, but he had eliminated them all. Unlike the first tier's rules, all forms of magic are now permitted. Though the no use of artifacts rule still applies, this is more than enough for Dale. This is the perfect opportunity to test the limits of his third circle. He coated the golem's hand with mana and activated accelerated decay. Everyone was astonished to see that. Eris wondered why he left it to rot instead of destroying it. Back in his previous life, when he was facing monsters, this strategy was just as critical as firepower. It was called biochemical warfare. He looks at them and wonders if they realize what they're witnessing, the grotesque process of biochemical warfare, now being expressed through black magic. That day, Dale completed the exam by breaking through to the 10th tier, setting a new record. He was then granted 4 days of rest before the 11th tier's trial. Meanwhile, to recover from the unprecedented massacre of the first tier, a rare retrial was permitted for the 59 other participants, with the exception of Dale, of course. That same night, after the trial, Cephia approached Dale, who was in the courtyard alone. She congratulated him on his success today. As always, he gave all the credit to her as his teacher. And then Dale did something unexpected. He asked Cephia on a date. He said there's a city festival happening right now, so he suggested going there on a date. She looked at him, thinking he wouldn't understand what a date is at his age, and was willing to play along. Dale's inner thoughts. Is this what people mean when they say that someone's dark on the inside? Hey. They reached the Necropolis City Festival. Cephia asked him if he was tired after his trial, but he was completely fine. It's not like he worked so hard to defeat all those monsters. Besides, there are still a few days left before the next trial. And then they continued walking without talking. Dale tried again. He said, "The moon is beautiful, isn't it?" This saying is a popular expression in Japan that could mean, "I love you," symbolically. But Cephia didn't know that. She looked at the moon and agreed with him. And the conversation died again. But Dale felt comfortable in the silence, as it had always been this way with the two of them. Dale felt that maybe it's because she believed in him from the start, but he found himself wanting to get closer to her. A few days ago, the day he attained his third circle, Dale finally understood what Cephia meant by facing the inner world. To surpass his limits, he had to overflow his mana capacity beyond the second circle. Only by enduring rampaging mana could he attain his third circle. Hence, he had a clear view of his inner self. He felt the Count stabbing him in the back and then entered a snowy landscape. When one enters deep meditation, they inevitably manifest the inner world. So this was his inner world. There was nothing there from the start, only absolute emptiness. And in that hollow world, Master Cephia reached out for him. Maybe that's why she's the one who brings light to his world. He felt that this was the right moment, and expressed his feelings to her. She was totally confused, so he repeated himself. I said I like you, Master Sophia. She gave him a soft smile and embraced him, saying she liked him very much as well. That made him glad for his second life, otherwise she would have never embraced him the way she did now. A few days later, the Tower Trial's 11th tier. Dale was discouraged that he did not make any progress with Sophia. She probably dismissed it as a childish crush from a 10-year-old boy. Well, love can wait. So he decided to focus on the exam. Eris announced the format of this trial, a one-on-one magic duel. The victor proceeds to the 12th tier. Dale's opponent is Third Circle Master Albert Rosenheim. He warned that he was not going to go easy on Dale just because he is a child. With that, the trial begins. The 11th tier's trial allows the use of all kinds of artifacts and mage strategies. That means the life necklace cannot guarantee safety. With the artifact restrictions lifted, there's no need for him to hold back. Dale is going to crush him completely, and show the difference in power between him and his opponent. Albert attacks without any warning and claims that he is completely different from those rookie students. Dale barely blocks it. He then releases dark arrows, his second attack toward Dale, with a smug face. Dale escapes all those arrows. Even if it was just for an instant, launching an attack spell before the duel even begins is a clear violation. However, there was no sign or signal from the judges to stop the duel. They must be curious to see how strong Dale really was. This is the reason Dale hates mages. While Dale was only trying to defend himself from the continued attack, Albert pulled his next one. Now arise, my creations! Swear eternal obedience before me, my servants born from the darkness deeper than the blood-hungry night, was his incantation. Dale only felt embarrassed at that stupid incantation and nothing else. As all the undead rose and charged toward Dale together, he could do nothing but dodge. Albert was feeling so high, as Dale couldn't win if he was only avoiding the attacks. After a few minutes of playing with him, Albert used his fourth attack, Death Explosion. This made all the undead swell up and explode like grenades around Dale. He thought he won. But when all the explosions settled down, Dale was nowhere to be seen. Albert's face paled now. All his attacks were spent. He looked around desperately for Dale, who was behind him. Dale approached him with a triumphant smile and acknowledged his sneak attack. Albert was too shocked to notice what was under his feet. He only looked down when the shadow sneaked up his leg, saying it was very, very hungry. The shadow asked for Dale's permission, and he allowed it just to tease everyone. After a few moments, he pulled his shadow back, leaving Albert on the ground, utterly failing. Round 1's winner is Dale. When it was time for round 2, none of the other mages were ready to fight him or risk losing their life, so everyone surrendered, leaving Dale to win. From round 3 onwards, all matches except the final one ended in default victories. Dale continued refining and shaping his 3 magic circles as he began to break through each tier's guardians. By the time he reached the 20th tier, a worthy opponent finally appeared, the Headless Knight. The Headless Knight, a knight created by one of the Tower Elders of the Noir Tower himself. That's an opponent unlike any before. Some from the side said that even for Dale, this is the highest he can go. But wouldn't it be boring if everything just went as expected? That was the only thought Dale had. Dale released his mana, and in a moment the Headless Knight got down from the horse and knelt before him. Dale entered his inner world and ordered the Headless Knight to kill himself. The audience experienced utter silence as they witnessed the Headless Knight collapse. Such loyalty that it even abandoned its duty as a guardian. Noticing everyone's attention, Dale thought he had gone a little overboard. Their reaction is a given when the creation betrayed its creator and swore loyalty to Dale. This is the proof that he reached a level equal to the Noir Tower Elder. He didn't intend to go to this extent, but he can't take it back now. Dale feels this is beyond what he planned to show everyone and heads back to the exit. Everyone was baffled as he headed back out, leaving the trial. He knows that there is a line even he shouldn't cross. Beyond this tier lies a realm that even monsters fear, something truly unknown. And thus Dale's trial came to an end. So, too, did the tower trial. The magic tower master, Alan, arrived, and the entire Noir Tower rose in unison like a military parade, with Dale beside his father. Both nobles and elders alike showed loyalty. Every mage of the Noir Tower paid their respects to the father and son. Thanks to Dale's overwhelming performance, the northern territories began to unite under their banner. Northern Empire, Saxon Dukedom. Upon the successful completion of the Tower trial, Duke Saxon assigned Dale command of the Orheart extermination squad. It was a task far too great for a 10-year-old child. Regardless, no one doubted his command as a commander. Thus, as the rightful heir of the Duke of Noir, he gradually began to unite the North. After successfully completing his task, Dale went to report to his father on the details. He reported that they had slain 145 orcs. His father asked if there were any casualties. 3 sustained minor injuries, otherwise none at all, was his answer. Then his father asked if he used magic to protect them. No, he didn't make that mistake this time and credited the results to their loyal swords. That was the end of the report, so his father gave him the appreciation he deserved. Sir Helmut also acknowledged that Dale had already grown comfortable commanding a large cavalry unit. He thanked Helmut in return for all his teachings. Helmut also pointed out that it wouldn't be long before he was leading full-scale territorial wars. A new stage is always welcome when it comes to Dale. Dale and Charlotte were engaged in their duel. After they were done, Dale observed that she had improved quite a bit. But she knew the fact that she couldn't compare to him. Dale laughed and asked if he teased her too much. She said, "Well, you're already a 3rd circle mage, and you passed the tower's 20th tier. Ever since then, everyone's been going young Master Dale this, young Master Dale that. Don't they get tired of it?" He smiled and told her not to worry, she would also get stronger. Considering that she was only 10 years old, Charlotte was already exceptional by any standard. She got pissed as he kept calling her a kid despite being the same age. But looking at his cockiness, she gave up and moved on. After his practice with Charlotte, he arrived at Sir Helmut's office for his war strategy lessons. Today's lesson was on the hammer and anvil tactic. Helmut explained. In battle, when the cavalry force is deployed on one or both flanks, the key is for the cavalry to break through the enemy's wings and encircle them. Meanwhile, the infantry blocks the enemy's cavalry advance. The hammer and anvil tactic is named as such because it's like placing iron on an anvil and striking it with a hammer. This tactic relies heavily on the cavalry forces. Dale observed this and agreed, as he had been in battles before, and the patterns of war were similar in every world. Dale suddenly asked how Charlotte's training was going. Helmut replied that while she couldn't compare with him, she was truly remarkable. She had already established her swordsmanship foundation. Soon, she would officially inherit House Saxon's aura cultivation and swordsmanship. However, there was one concern. Dale guessed it before his uncle said anything. It was her compatibility with their sword style. While mages refine mana into magic through their heart circles, knights refine mana into aura through their cultivation techniques. Mages from magic towers advance through mastery of structure, while knights form orders by passing down their sword techniques. Among them, the Black Cavalry of the North is like charging war chariots. The strength exercised by the Knight Crown Knight Order of House Saxon clearly demonstrates how the Northern Knights specialize in crushing the battlefield with raw power. The problem is that Charlotte's sword technique focuses on speed and fluid motion. She wields a quick, free-flowing sword. Given her talent, she might make it to the lowest ranks of the 7 sword masters, perhaps. But she would still never become the first sword. The principle of the 7 swords, the position once held by her father, the Sword of Blossom. If only that sword art still existed. However, it was completely lost upon the fall of the Knight Nation. Dale wondered if it truly vanished from this world forever. After that, Dale's days grew even more relentless. As he balanced monster subjugations with his studies, his reputation continued to grow steadily. The time had come to demonstrate the results of his progress. Meanwhile, a high-ranking noble visited the Duke in the Great Hall to deliver something. A neighboring territory led by Baron Parker had filed for a territorial war, claiming ownership of a copper mine that belonged to him. In this world, borders between lands and nations were far less clear-cut than one might think. Still, Dale thought, a low-ranking noble picking a fight with a high-ranking noble was absurd. The noble continued, if he refused to yield the mine and accept the challenge, Count Brandenburg had reportedly sided with the Baron to uphold his claim. Furthermore, a letter arrived offering to dispatch the Knight Order of St. Magdalena in exchange for a portion of the mine's profits. This was Brandenburg's plan. He still hadn't forgotten his humiliation from the Duke in the past. So if this is how they were going to act, Dale was determined to respond in the same way. Ever since that day, he must have thought only about repaying the humiliation he received from the Duke Noir. But it would have been difficult for him to openly start a territorial war, so he chose to settle this in a border region where his presence would be ambiguous. Dale asked his father if he would like to command this battle together with the Knights of House Saxon. But Alan refused, saying it was too early for him to shoulder this. And he warned him against speaking recklessly, as a war against people is entirely different from slaying monsters. Dale had never been spoken to in such a way before. The Duke assured the noble that he would solve this issue himself. The noble thanked the Duke for his generosity and left. Dale left the room as well. Later, he expressed his emotions about his father's words to Sir Helmut. Helmut told him not to take his father's words seriously, as he must have had a reason behind saying so. To encourage him, Helmut gave him a strategy game, which was more than similar to chess. It was called a war game in this world. Helmut explained that it was a game much similar to real warfare, so the rules were complicated, but once mastered, it would help greatly. While he suggested they play together to learn some tactics, Dale took the game and ran away. Dale reached his father's office and proposed a deal. If he played and won the game against his father, he would get permission to join the territorial war. His father asked him why he was not changing his decision even after what he said. Dale replied, I learned that war is not merely a clash of strength but a profound contest of minds. So please evaluate me through one match. Sir Helmut arrived and apologized for what Dale said and tried to take him away. But his father accepted his deal. Dale thanked him in return for believing in him. But if he lost the game, he should abandon the idea of participating in the battle, which he was cool with. To everyone's surprise, Dale won the game. Sir Helmut was shocked. Despite Duke Saxon generously giving young Master Dale the advantage of superior troop numbers and favorable terrain, Dale won 2 of 3 matches against the Duke himself. His father asked when he had known this game. He said he found a rulebook in the library a few years ago and started learning it. Of course, that was a lie. If he hadn't spun that lie somehow, he would have seemed far too strange. As a promise is a promise, his father granted him full command of the knights for the coming battle. But he clarified that no matter how high his expectations were, the honor of House Saxon was at stake, and defeat would not be accepted. So his father asked him one more time, Can you truly shoulder this fight entirely on your own? Dale assured him, saying he could be fully trusted. Some time later, at the stronghold of Brandenburg, Malberg, Brandenburg was shouting at his son for spending the day drinking and fooling around. He was more frustrated as he got the news about Dale leading the knights. His son, still fully drunk, told him not to worry about a 10-year-old brat. He was Count Brandenburg's eldest son, Philip. Every word coming out of his son's mouth only made him more frustrated. I ask that you allow me to crush the arrogant brat of House Saxon with your knights. Brandenburg banged his hand on the desk and yelled, The arrogant brat of House Saxon? He's a monster you couldn't catch up to even in 100 years. Philip fell to the ground, finally coming to consciousness. His father continued, Pathetic insect, inferior even to a 10-year-old child. Brandenburg regretted not having secured Charlotte yet. So he told his son, For this battle, I'll entrust you with the command of our knights. Philip didn't understand what was happening, but was happy about it. His father said, Why are you so pleased? Your role is to just stand there and look pretty. Nothing more. What do you mean? Said Philip. The actual command will be handled by Sir Milvas. Your job is just to be the army's figurehead. That will suffice. And with that, he ordered Sir Milvis to take Philip away. Brandenburg wanted to take the field himself, but he couldn't go all out against the child and suspected that this was all part of a plan by Duke Saxon. A few days later, Dale arrived at Baron Greenbelt's territory. He was welcomed rather skeptically, as they had expected the Duke. All the knights started saying mean things about Dale being a kid. The Baron, the noble, tried to thank him in a polite way, but had his doubts too. He welcomed Dale's team to a banquet they had arranged. But Dale told him there was not much time, and aimed his sword at the Baron. First, I want to inspect the condition of the troops under your command. Among the soldiers you lead. So Dale asked who was the strongest among them. A man with red hair steps forward, saying he is the strongest and that no man who can defeat him has been born yet in that place. But on the inside, he was irritated at the small kid pointing a sword at people's throats, and decided to put him in his place. Dale takes back his sword, saying, All of you here seem to be doubting my ability. You doubt me because I'm a mere 10-year-old who was put in charge of an important battle without any prior discussions, right? He stabs his sword into the ground, breaking the tiles there, and continues. Well, I'm also doubting the competence of your knights. The surest way to clear our mutual doubts is with the sword, wouldn't you say? But here's the amusing part. Your so-called strongest knight of the order, who you so proudly boast about, is a knight drunk off his ass. At this point, I don't even need to question him. He's proving my doubts all by himself. Did drinking also give you courage? This struck the spot, and Harbuck, the red-haired man, pulled out his sword and accepted Dale's challenge. Before starting the duel, Dale asked the man if he had heard about his sword. Harbuck said yes and was slightly pissed by this kid's confidence. With that, they started their fight. Harbuck attacked first. Dale blocked his attack with both hands, one controlling his artifact and the other with the sword. It didn't go unnoticed that his sword was not even infused with mana. But Harbuck told himself that only a few knights were able to use aura blades, so he dismissed this and decided to go easy on the kid. But he kept getting attacked from everywhere. Dale's artifact kept distracting him from making a proper blow. Dale was just getting started when he heard a yelp. Harbuck was on the ground holding his shoulder, as it was broken. He wasn't even struck. Even Dale was surprised at this. He didn't even do anything for Harbuck to be hurt so badly. The Baron was frightened and yelled at Dale for taking down his elite knight even before the battle began. Dale was equally frustrated to see someone that incompetent calling themselves elite. He said to the Baron, Don't you understand your situation? With that pathetic skill, your Greenbelt forces would only drag us down in the upcoming battle. Were you planning to just sit back and watch while House Saxon does all the work? The Baron was stunned by Dale's tone of speaking. Dale continued, Is that man truly the knight you boasted about as your strongest? The Saxon house never hesitates to serve as the shield of the house we protect. But that does not excuse you from neglecting your duty. Therefore, until the battle arrives, our duchy knights will serve as your sword. Now choose. Will you follow me, or will you lose the land beneath your feet? With that, everyone kneeled in front of Dale and swore their loyalty. The matter was settled. In the Noir Castle, Elena was worried sick for her son, and Alan tried his best to console her, saying, There's nothing to worry about, Elena. That child possesses more than we could imagine. When Dale grows older, the sights he'll witness are beyond even what I can fathom. One day, our child will become the ruler of this world. And on the other side, Dale was annoyed that every single one of them was utterly incompetent. He felt like he had lived as a frog in a well and only realized now how pathetic the world outside that well really was. Of course, the holy swordsman chose to intervene in this territory. He must have known the truth about Greenbelt beforehand. Well, Dale had his own plans against that sorcery. The next day, all the knights of Greenbelt, especially Harbuck, underwent strict training. He kept winning without even trying his best and kept getting praises from the knights of Saxon. Dale ordered Sir Bale to teach the bunch of incompetents everything, starting with stamina training. He also ordered him to send someone to Baron Parker's territory to tell them they were proposing a negotiation. Sir Bael was confused by the term negotiation. But Dale had no intention of accepting humiliating peace terms, he simply wanted to see someone before the battle. Negotiation site. Located at the border between the two baronies. They have a few weeks before the battle begins. Since the Knight Order of St. Magdalena is embarking on a long-distance march across the continent, and given how poor their supply situation is, they're highly likely to launch a preemptive strike. Furthermore, Baron Parker's knightly forces are not to be underestimated. The person whom Dale wanted to see had arrived. Sir Bael announced that Lord Philip was here. As Dale expected, the hollow figurehead, Commander Philip, and the real commander, Sir Milvas, entered the tent. Dale welcomed them. In return, Philip only asked why he wanted to negotiate after all this time and insisted that Dale had gotten scared before the real war. Dale smiled and asked why he even agreed to the negotiation. Philip tried to answer with something, but Dale stopped him, saying that he wasn't talking to Philip, the puppet shoved into the role of the battle's figurehead, but was asking the real commander behind him, Sir Milvas, the pure sword. Philip was enraged, but Dale simply asked if he was not correct. Why else would a holy swordsman entrust command of an entire battlefield to someone without even the slightest shred of talent? Milvas, from behind, understood what Dale was trying to do and asked his lord not to take his words seriously. The fact that Brandenburg considers Philip a disgrace is a secret known only to a handful of people. So, how in the world Dale knows about this is a surprise. Dale keeps pushing his buttons. How does it feel knowing that your own esteemed father doesn't have the slightest bit of trust in you? Sir Milvas tries to stop him by dismissing the negotiation and attempts to take Philip away from there. But Dale says something again. Do you even require permission to speak? You're lowering your head to receive the orders of someone beneath you. It makes you look like a slave. Is that the appearance befitting the firstborn of a count's house? This is like a dog putting a leash on its master. He was getting exactly where Dale wanted him. Milvas tries to persuade him from being dragged into this. Dale had to just notch it up a little. At this rate, I really can't tell whether you're the holy swordsman's puppet, or Sir Milvas' puppet. Dale's plan of disrupting the enemy's command was working quite well. He never intended to negotiate to begin with. Dale asked Sir Bael to step outside for a minute. It was another tactic to get Philip alone. It would seem quite embarrassing when a 10-year-old is alone commanding his troops while Philip needs his babysitter. So Philip took the bait and ordered Sir Milvas to leave. After he left reluctantly, Dale proposed and started to speak. As I said earlier, I requested this meeting strictly for negotiations. Philip asked if Dale had anything to persuade him. Dale said that's right. If the Knight Order of St. Magdalena withdraws from this battle immediately, House Saxon will provide all supplies required for your army's return journey. Philip stood up at once after hearing this. He was enraged to call this a negotiation. Dale simply said yes and apologized for earlier comments. However, Dale said, Please withdraw your forces. Otherwise, your army will be annihilated, and hundreds of knights will be taken prisoner. Moreover, the holy swordsman's reputation will fall, and your name will be dragged through the mud. This is your final chance to maintain even a shred of dignity. But Philip didn't accept it and laughed, saying Sir Milvas was right about Dale wanting to mock them from the beginning. Dale gave him a cruel smile and said this was his last chance. When the battle is lost, the one who will bear the blame will not be Sir Milvas the commander, but the incompetent, utterly useless firstborn of a count. Philip was not having it. He contemplated at first, but then he told Dale it was absurd and that soon he would prove himself before everyone. Dale, with the same smile, told him to hold on to that confidence as long as he could. Hence, the negotiations collapsed. Shortly after, in Greenbelt Barony, Sir Milvas was looking out for Saxon's movements before the battle. A knight told him that House Saxon had begun mobilizing. Sir Milvas couldn't shake away the eyes he beheld in Dale the last time they met. He was certain that those eyes were not of a beginner, and knew not to underestimate him. But anyhow, it didn't remove the fact that he was a 10-year-old child, So he used this as motivation for his troops and encouraged them to silence that loud mouth and stop his growth right there. On the opposing side, Harbuck informed Dale that the enemy's force had begun moving. Dale turned towards his army and bellowed, "Swords of House Saxon, your time has come. Today, show them blood worthy of that name." The battle has begun. Sir Milvus led his first cavalry battalion. The key to this battle is stopping the Night Crow Knight Order of House Saxon. But Brandenburg's troops can't clearly gauge the Night Crow's firepower. Therefore, to prevent any unforeseen accidents, Lord Philip must be placed not at the front, but in the center of the formation. Next, Baron Parker's forces need to be stationed on the left wing to tie down the Greenbelt Knight Order. During that time, Milvus planned to lead Count Brandenburg's elite troops to strike the Night Crow Knight Order of House Saxon from the flank. With the center and left wing containing the enemy assault, they move forward with a straightforward strategy. Both sides are at their strongest points with strategies to strike. All that is left to see is who is cleverer. Dale entered the front lines himself, boosting his troops' confidence. Milvus saw him and thought, "So, they intend to settle this with a direct clash between the main forces from the start. To think he's willingly making himself the bait. As expected, you're no ordinary man." But this is exactly what Milvus wanted. He led his troops to charge ahead with full force, intending to end this battle swiftly by defeating Dale directly. He encouraged his troops to live up to their expectations and defeat the enemy with honor. As they charged and clashed with the enemy, Milvus slowly started to notice something. The Night Crow Knight Order is falling effortlessly. This is the same cavalry that is infamous as the destroyers of battlefields. And to prove his suspicions, a soldier came to him bearing news. "Baron Parker's forces are being overrun. They can't handle the assault." This was completely opposite of their understanding of the Night Crow Knight Order's battle strategy. On the other end, Philip couldn't understand why those Greenbelt fools were using aura. Then a soldier arrived and informed him that the left wing under Baron Parker was requesting reinforcements. House Saxon's aura knights had broken through Baron Parker's lines. They demanded orders from Philip. But him being an absolute fool, and getting carried away with Dale's remarks from earlier instead of strengthening his forces with strategy, caused more chaos. Another soldier approached him with a message from Milvus. He couldn't have come at a worse time. He said that Milvus recommended merging the center and rear cavalry with the left wing to reinforce the defense. Philip fell into Dale's paws and disregarded Milvus' recommendation. He told them to redirect all rear cavalry to him, and they were going to strike the right wing. Before the left wing collapses, he planned to kill Dale and end this at once. The soldier informed Milvus about this stupidity. He couldn't do anything now. The right wing was already pushing back the enemy's weakened left wing. Additional reinforcements would only clog up movement and reduce efficiency. But that fool was blinded by the single thought of striking the enemy commander and had ignored all calls for aid, leading to a catastrophic misjudgment. At this rate, the left wing would completely collapse, and they would be surrounded. The soldiers suggested they retreat, but Milvus was not going to accept defeat so easily. Dale's confident eyes were bothering him. With the rage of Philip's behavior and the confident look in Dale's eyes, Milvus became more lethal, and he decided to crush Dale's arrogance himself. So he charged with his first cavalry into the battlefield. There was only one path left now. The soldiers awaited his command. He pressed his sword to his forehead and prayed, "In the name of Saint Magdalena, may the pure sword be blessed. May the protection of Goddess Sistina be upon us. May the sister goddesses grant us grace and mercy." Milvus bellowed, "From this moment, we break through the enemy lines and take the enemy commander's head. Raise your swords and follow me." They charged, leaving their victory to the fates. They didn't know it yet, but they were walking straight into Dale's trap. On the front lines, a commander's field of vision is always quick to narrow. The weight of war and anxiety clouds one's judgment. That weight is likely something even Sir Milvus cannot escape. No one would have thought that someone on the battlefield would have learned even the basics of magic. But Dale is an exception for that exact reason. He aimed his ice bullet arrow toward a shocked enemy line. It hit a knight's horse just behind the commander. He observed how accurate the aim was even while riding at full speed. The spell itself was impressive, but without serious combat skill and archery, one wouldn't even be able to begin to imitate that level of skill. Dale then raised a wall of ice between him and the enemy line. It blocked the enemy's path, and Dale, on the other side, marched his troops for the counterattack. They charged with the will to shield Dale with their own lives. Milvus realized his mistake. The Night Crow Knight Order's goal was not to bring him down. It was to protect their commander and buy time. And on top of that, Philip made the worst possible move. Because of him, the center forces were overcrowded on the right flank, and their entire front line was grotesquely twisted out of shape. At this point, Milvus thought the only option left was to face Dale himself. He charged ahead, not to fight him, but to beg for mercy. From his previous knowledge, Dale knew that Milva's habit of overestimating the power of Aura Knights seemed unchanged. The battle doctrines that the Knight Order of St. Magdalena had piled up were sometimes their most fatal weakness. The jailer who watched over Dale in his previous life was none other than the holy swordsman who led that very Knight Order. So, whether Dale liked it or not, he ended up seeing a great deal of the ways of the Knight Order of St. Magdalena under his command. He came to know them very keenly. A soldier approached and reported that the knights under Baron Greenbelt had broken through. The commander of the left wing, Baron Parker, had also been captured. Milvus, who was listening to this report, was enraged, saying most of this was the result of Philip's stupid decision. Dale stated the fact that, after all, Philip didn't trust his commander all that much. Milvus was putting everything together, and realized Dale had been setting traps for them from the beginning. To that, he replied, "The battlefield is always chaotic, and no one can foresee what is to come. In repeated chaos, those who end up courting their own ruin have only their own foolishness to blame. In accordance with the great traditions of the Empire, I intend to show mercy to those who beg for their lives for the price of a few gold coins. Will you also beg for your lives?" The enemy soldiers denied doing any such thing, and ended up dead. Dale then asked what Milvus would do now. He bowed his head, and his knights were enraged at the sight. He did this not because he was afraid of death, but because he had to pass on to the knights that this boy was truly dangerous. Milvus commanded his knights to get down on their knees and said, "In accordance with the Empire's traditions, we'll surrender and demand proper treatment as prisoners of war." As they already bowed on their knees and begged, Dale was satisfied and thought no further provocation was needed. He never intended to let them go. Dale ordered his knights to kill them all, a boy-like smile on his face. Even the warriors of the Night Crow Knight Order momentarily gasped at those words. By imperial custom, it was normal for captured knights to be released upon payment of their ransom. Even so, Dale's voice was unyielding. For the Knights of Saxon, his orders were more than anything else. And on this field, one man ultimately brought about his own ruin. Milva's rage burst out. He swung his sword, unwilling to end his life like this and in such a state. But before he could reach Dale, his own soldiers stabbed him from behind, and he fell to the ground. Dale slowly lifted Sir Milvus into his hands and whispered in his ear, "Sir Milvus, do you remember my death?" He didn't understand what Dale meant by those words. But Dale remembered seeing his face that night. "You were also present when your lord drove your sword into my back." Dale shifted back, looked into his eyes, and said, "I ask you again, young knight. Do you remember my death?" Milvus started to realize who Dale was as he screamed, "That's impossible. Did you really claw your way back to life, you damned monster?" Dale released his shadows and answered, "Yes. Only now do I feel even a little bit relieved." By the time Philip came to his senses, they were already defeated. The right-wing cavalry was crushed, and Sir Milvus and all the Aura Knights were killed in action. The left wing had also been breached long ago, and the black cavalry was surrounding the main unit. Realizing this, he couldn't get Dale's mocking smile out of his head. It haunted him. His emotions spiraled out of control as he commanded his soldiers to fight to the very last breath. Retreat was unthinkable. There would be no turning back. Yet the soldiers protested, knowing such an order could lead to only one end: total annihilation. Their pleas fell on deaf ears. His voice thundered across the ranks as he roared. "Do you dare defy the will of your supreme commander?" He ordered them to charge one last time. But the command meant nothing in the end. An enemy soldier stepped forward, and in his final moments, his thoughts were not of his people nor his fallen kingdom, but of regret, of nights not spent drinking deeply enough, of women he had not taken. His only wish was a coward's mercy: to die in the comfort of a bed, not to lose on a blood-soaked battlefield. Everything went exactly according to Dale's plan. Philip was now kneeling before him, spouting nonsense about being broken but not defeated. Dale looked at him with disgust and said, "For someone who ran away just to save his own skin, you say quite plausible-sounding things." Philip shamelessly replied that he had a duty to survive until the end as the commander of this battle. Dale used his words against him and pulled out his sword. As the battle was already over, there was no need for him to live anymore. Fear gripped Philip's heart, and with no path left to escape, he accepted the one-on-one duel Dale had proposed earlier. Dale's commander had no patience for Philip's foolish words, but Dale allowed it to pass. Without any formal beginning to the duel, Philip suddenly charged forward in a desperate attack. Dale, knowing how utterly worthless his opponent was, had expected nothing less. With a casual motion, he released a small shadow strike from his palm. Philip collapsed instantly, rolling across the ground, screaming in pain and begging for mercy. The sight was so humiliating that even the onlookers could not bear to watch. And so, the noisy war ended with a ridiculous scream. Dale was welcomed with great fanfare. Everywhere he went, voices rose in praise, recounting his glorious deeds on the battlefield. Everyone, that is, except one man. To him, this victory was not something to celebrate. Had not rivers of blood flowed on that day? Was such slaughter truly what God desired? The blade of that child was now pointed at enemies, but would the day not come when it would turn upon allies without hesitation? These were the grim words spoken by Cardinal Nikolai of the goddess Sistina Faith. As Dale entered the palace, his younger sister Lisa ran to him, her face glowing with joy. She welcomed him warmly, and he embraced her, gently asking if she had missed him. She nodded eagerly. She had missed him more than words could express. Sir Helmut offered his congratulations, and hand in hand, the siblings walked toward their parents. Dale knelt on one knee and spoke formally. "Dale of Saxon hereby reports the victory to your Excellency the Duke." His father nodded with approval. "You led this victory magnificently. It was a victory made possible by the sword of the Saxon family," Dale replied. The Duke then thanked Bell, the commander, for guiding Dale through the campaign. His mother stepped forward, her voice gentle. "You must be exhausted after returning so soon after the battle. Go and get some proper rest first." Dale bowed his head in gratitude and thanked her. At that very same moment, two soldiers, one with a shattered arm, the other dragging a broken leg, were brought before Brandenburg. He demanded to know Philip's whereabouts. Trembling uncontrollably, one of them reported, "Sir Milvas and all the Aura Knights, including the Knights of St. Magdalena, were killed in action. The Saxon family captured young Master Philip and several squires as prisoners. They are demanding an enormous ransom." Brandenburg stepped forward, his fury boiling over. "I see. So you suffered a crushing defeat, and then fled shamelessly to save your own lives?" His eyes burned with rage. "Are you prepared to face the consequences of desertion?" The soldiers collapsed to their knees, pleading that they had no excuses and begging for mercy. Brandenburg showed none. "Take them to the basement," he ordered his guards coldly. "I will make them beg me to kill them instead." The battle of that day, later known as the Black and White War, was gradually exaggerated by rumor and retelling. From that day onward, the image of Dale standing before enemies who cried for their lives spread far and wide. He came to be known as the Black Young Master, a boy who granted not a shred of mercy. And thus Dale turned 11 years old. On his 11th birthday, his father presented him with a gift. At the upcoming official ceremony, Dale would be appointed Viscount of the Saxon Duchy, a title that granted him the authority to act as the Lord's proxy. With this, his father fulfilled his promise to recognize Dale as an equal head of the family. Dale thanked him sincerely, but he had one more request. "It may be sudden," he said, "but there is a duty I wish to carry out as Your Excellency's proxy." His father asked what it was. "People say that in that battle, the black young master showed a cruelty that spared no prisoners. Knights armed with the faith of the goddess fell by my hand, and the church will not look kindly upon this." Dale paused before continuing. "Therefore, I wish to go on a pilgrimage to the Sistina papal territory. There I will face the weight of the infamy I have spread, first hand." His father remained silent for a while before finally saying that he didn't understand. "Fear is a tremendous asset, something you can't trade for anything else. And yet you intend to deny your own infamy and cultivate favor with the church? They're a faction worth conceding that much to," Dale replied. His father asked whether he had another plan in mind. "Yes, I do. I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse," Dale said. However, something else lingered at the back of his mind. While he was at it, he also planned to get his hands on the forbidden grimoires. This decision stemmed from something that had happened a few days earlier. Dale had a nightmare. A skeleton with glowing blue eyes seized him and shook him violently, demanding to know if he remembered its death. Half asleep and utterly shocked, Dale muttered something along the lines of, "We remember our death." The skeleton vanished, and in the next instant, his chest burst open, as if someone had stabbed him from behind. He woke up with a gasp, clutching his heart. That nightmare was the abyss of the mind. It was the darkest scene he had witnessed within the mind world when he forcibly opened it to form his third circle. The practice of controlling one's inner world and refining it is both the beginning and the end of a mage. And yet, he was tormented by loneliness and nightmares because of that very world. It was a pathetic spectacle, utterly ridiculous. He realized he was still lacking. To fully control his mind, he needed greater power. Just as a knight carries a sword at his side, a great mage possesses a grimoire. That alone gave him another reason to visit the Sistine papal territory. Thus, his journey began. Early on, he reached the border between Baron Greenbelt's territory, where the black and white turning point had once unfolded, and Baron Parker's land. This marked the end of the Empire's northern region and the beginning of the central lands, beyond the reach of Duke Sazen's influence. For Baron Parker, who had been defeated by Dale in battle, only one choice remained: banditry. A few men approached Dale and Bell. Or rather, their arrows reached them before the men did. Bell asked what this was all about. One of them replied that it was common sense to pay a toll upon entering a noble's territory. Dale said he had anticipated this, tossed a bag of gold coins onto the ground, and continued on his way. But these were bandits. Nothing was ever enough for them. After traveling a few more miles, an even larger group appeared. They claimed that Dale and Bell could not pass without paying a toll. Bell pointed out that they had already paid one of their subordinates earlier, and added that collecting tolls more than once was illegal. The subordinate who had taken the bag of gold stepped forward, grinning proudly, and began spouting nonsense. "Paid it? What nonsense are you spouting in broad daylight? We've just met, haven't we? Besides, we're the ones who follow the Empire's laws more than anyone." Their leader, or something resembling one, shouted, "If you value your lives, quietly hand over everything you have." The subordinate chimed in again. "Yeah, that's right. This man survived to the very end of that famous black and white turning point. He's the hero who turned the tides, Baron Parker." Dale burst out laughing so loudly that all the men standing atop the hill flinched. He pulled back his hood and said, "A hero who turned the tides, you say? That's quite different from what I remember." They all recognized him. Instead of fleeing for their lives, their commander ordered them not to panic. After all, there were only two opponents, and they themselves were armed with numerous archers. They believed they could win. Bell asked Dale for the order. "Yes," Dale replied. He had no intention of playing with these puppets any longer. Bell instantly halted the incoming arrows and launched himself forward, swiftly dealing with the lowlifes. When he reached the commander, the man fell to his knees begging for mercy. He offered to return the gold taken earlier and even swore loyalty, pleading for the mercy of the sister goddess. Dale looked down at him and said, "Why would I do that?" Dale passed countless robber nobles and bandit knights like them as he traveled across the central continent. Several weeks later, they finally arrived. Bell said, "This is the papal state of Sistina, Pucel, the city of the Holy See." Dale gazed upon it and found the title City of the Holy See utterly absurd. He claimed to have come on a pilgrimage, yet the word judgment suited his intentions far better. Dale and his commander, Bell, entered the castle to meet Nikolai Makia, a sixth-circle white mage and one of the 12 clerics who stood at the pinnacle of the goddess church. Both of them knelt respectfully before the mage and offered their greetings. The mage smiled warmly at Dale and spoke. "I heard that an immense amount of blood was spilled in that battle, young master. The sacrifice of St. Magdalena's brothers was truly regrettable." Dale replied calmly, "I too find the outcome of the black and white turning point deeply unfortunate. Due to my insufficient judgment, I caused unnecessary sacrifices. And so, to atone for that bloodshed, I came to the papal state in person, concealing my power and status, to go on a pilgrimage. I hope my resolve will not scatter in vain." Bell's expression made it clear what he thought. This kid was being a bit excessive. The mage studied Dale silently. Dale of Saxon, son of the Lord of the Noir Tower, and the Empire's greatest genius. Did the horrors of the battlefield twist his mind into guilt? Even with such radiant talent, he's still nothing more than an 11-year-old brat. With a calculating smile, he thought, in that case, this works out well. Aloud, he said, "The goddess's mercy is offered equally to all, young master. There are no sins in this world that cannot be washed away." That sentence was all Dale needed to hear. "You say there are no sins that cannot be washed away?" Dale asked. The mage replied indulgently, as though speaking to a child. "Yes, of course." "Then," Dale continued, "did you sell the goddess's nation to the Empire?" Mage Nikolai froze, shock flashing across his face. He hesitated before responding. "That joke goes too far." Everyone present knew Dale was not joking. "Back then," Dale said evenly, "just before the theocracy was forcibly annexed by the Empire, I heard that 12 bishop-ranked cardinals attempted to persuade the former pope to accept annexation. You were present as well, Cardinal Nikolai. However, the former pope rejected the Empire's treaty until the very end. And as a result, through the betrayal of the White Tower and the bishop-ranked cardinals, the pope was eliminated by the Empire's hounds." Dale's gaze sharpened. "The sins of your eminence, who sold out his own country, did the goddess forgive those as well?" There was no longer any reason for Cardinal Nikolai to maintain his composed grace. His fury burst forth. "You speak of atonement, yet dare to utter forbidden truths with that same mouth," he shouted. "Do you truly believe the goddess's mercy stands by your side? How laughable!" Dale stood up and raised his voice in return. "Do you think killing a mere representative of the Duke will silence this? His Grace did not send me to dig up the Church's shame. What we seek is simply the price of a small silence." Of course, it was a lie. Duke Alan of Saxon could not even imagine what was unfolding here. But Dale's bluff worked. After a tense silence, the Cardinal asked what he wanted. "Beneath the Apostolic Palace," Dale said, "at its lowest level, lies a secret archive that imprisons the Church's forbidden books. Grant me permission to access the Library of Hell." Dale knew that on its deepest floor rested the most terrifying grimoire in the world, the Book of the Black Goat. Permission was granted, but with strict conditions. Dale alone would be allowed to enter the Library of Hell. No matter what occurred within, the Church would not interfere. He was permitted to take only a single grimoire, nothing more. In return, he was required to swear eternal silence regarding the Church's secrets. Dale accepted without hesitation. "As the heir of the Noir Duke," he declared, "I swear it in the name of Saxon." As proof of this sacred oath, Dale and the Cardinal formed a pact using the White Tower's famed contract magic, Hayes. From that moment on, There was no doubt, should Dale violate the contract, the heirs would crush his heart. It was not such a great secret anyway. Dale soon arrived at the entrance of the library. Etched upon the doors of hell were the words, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." As he read them, the doors slowly opened. There was a reason this place was called hell. It was a massive dungeon masquerading as a library. The forbidden books sealed within were uncontrollable artifacts, each capable of bringing catastrophe. Yet just as a famed knight wields a legendary sword, a grimoire holds the same meaning to a mage. No matter how dangerous or imperfect, the desire to obtain a great grimoire is only natural. After walking deeper into the library, Dale encountered its guardians. He scoffed inwardly. For people who preached about light, using corpses was no different from the practices of the Noir Tower. At first, Dale restrained himself while dealing with the undead. Then he realized something. No one was watching. There was no reason to hide his power. He unleashed it fully, obliterating all the guardians with a single shadow bullet. It was surprisingly refreshing not having to suppress himself. Once the useless sentinels were gone, he continued onward. He drew a dagger and slashed his arm, letting his blood spill onto the stone floor. He declared loudly, "I am Dale of Saxon, the rightful heir of the lineage that inherits the blood of the immortal Duke. I proclaim this here. O black goat of the forest, who commands 1,000 offspring, fulfill the contract you made with the Dark Clan and reveal yourself before me." Immediately, voices echoed throughout the abyss. "Blood! Blood! Blood filled with tremendous power! Fresh mage's blood! He wants to make a contract with us! Child, come here! I'll give you power! Move aside! That child is my contractor!" Dale felt it, the hatred, the killing intent, the scent of slaughter. Pools of blood. Scattered corpses. Is this a world contained within a book? He wondered. Just then, a man appeared behind him. "I will make a contract with you," the figure said. "I swear to slaughter all of your enemies. I will hold a festival of corpses and blood for those who dare stand in your way." Dale looked thoroughly uninterested as the man continued to promise ruthless acts of destruction. "I will hold a festival of corpses and blood for those who stand in your way." Dale thought to himself, judging by this scenery, this must be the mind space of the grimoire, the Book of Massacre. It was a book filled with the secrets of atrocious blood magic, embodying mass slaughter itself. Its power and value were beyond words, befitting its name. Even so, Dale ordered the figure to step back. This was not the book he was looking for. The man was enraged by the dismissal and refused to accept rejection. He swung his weapon at Dale, threatening not to let him leave this place alive. Dale remained as calm as ever. "That's not impossible," he said. "This is merely a world inside a book. Your world cannot intrude upon mine. But my world is different. One world devours another." The man believed his world to be shaped by the thoughts of a heinous war criminal, someone who had committed forbidden, mass destruction magic. Yet that belief did nothing to stop his world from collapsing into nothingness before Dale. In an instant, Dale devoured the man's world. The man stood frozen in disbelief. How could a sixth circle, high mage level world be pushed back so easily? He screamed in panic. "How am I being devoured by the world of a mere child? The number your master killed doesn't even compare to my past," Dale replied flatly. "I can't remember a single city, because I destroyed far too many." Still in denial, the man tried to reclaim his world by defeating Dale. He swung his sword again, unaware that his body was already falling apart, limb by limb. Moments later, he vanished completely, allowing Dale to break through and return to reality. Back in the library, a girl about Dale's age appeared behind him. She had ram's horns on her head and called out cheerfully, "Big brother, did you call for me?" She smiled brightly as she approached. "Nice to meet you. I was so lonely all this time. You'll play with me, right?" Dale didn't respond, but he knew exactly who she was. The Book of the Black Goat, a grimoire written by the immortal Duke Frederick in his pursuit of truths beyond death. one that required the sacrifice of his own young daughter as an offering. Because of this, the grimoire's avatar took the form of a young girl. Yet she was never truly the immortal Duke's real daughter. Ignoring her questions, Dale went straight to the point and asked her to form a contract. She tilted her head and asked him to show her his world. Dale revealed it. She stared in awe, clearly impressed, and whispered that it was beautiful. Turning back to Dale, she smiled warmly and said she really liked him. Then she paused. Pointing behind him, toward where Nikolai stood with his men, she asked innocently, "Who are they?" Nikolai looked startled. He had likely assumed the library would deal with this young brat on its own. Seeing that Dale had already secured the grimoire so quickly left him shaken. Dale turned to him casually. "What are you doing here?" Nikolai had no justification. Dale reminded him calmly. "The contracting parties bear no responsibility for what happens in hell." He smiled faintly. "You must have been uneasy. It seems the heir's oath alone wasn't enough to put you at ease. You came here to eliminate me, but this is a world of darkness. You chose the wrong place for a mage of light to stand." The cardinal still tried to feign innocence, claiming he was only concerned. Behind Dale, the young girl clasped her hands excitedly and asked, "Can I eat them?" Dale glanced back at her and nodded. "You can, but be careful. You might upset your stomach." At that moment, the cardinal dropped his act and began praying loudly. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Have mercy on us, eleison. Grant us mercy, miserere nobis. God wills it. May the sister goddess's compassion be with us. The Lord's light covers you, praise him, alleluia!" The knights who stood with Cardinal Nikolai sprouted wings. Lifted into the air by power borrowed from their lord, they prepared to fight with their lives. At Nikolai's command to destroy the servant of Satan, they all attacked Dale at once. Dale dodged their assaults and fired shadow bullets to take them down in a single sweep. However, they were more skilled than he had anticipated and evaded every shot. Nikolai beamed with pride. "As expected of my angels! No matter how much of a genius you are, you're still only at the third circle. Even the Book of the Black Goat cannot display its full power in your hands." He continued praying, channeling blessings into his angels. Each word was like a thorn stabbing into the young girl's ears. She reached her limit. "Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!" She leapt into the air between the angels and unleashed her tentacles. Yet they severed every one of them effortlessly, sending her crashing to the ground. One angel descended toward her, ready to pass final judgment. But something stopped him mid-strike. The young girl was no longer irritated. She was smiling. In the next moment, the angels began to be consumed from within. It was as if poison coursed through their bodies, devouring them from the inside out. Purple veins spread across their forms as they screamed in agony. Nikolai panicked. "What's happening?" Even as their bodies were consumed, the angels continued chanting praises, right until the end. Veins spread across their entire bodies, draining them dry until nothing remained but husks. The young girl watched excitedly, eager to savor the moment she had waited so long for. An evil god that devoured the flesh of angels, this was her true nature. And the one who had summoned her, the young master of the Noir Tower, was no ordinary 11-year-old. Nikolai finally realized this. Dale was not someone who could be described with words like prodigy of a ducal house or the Empire's greatest genius. He was something far more terrifying. A child of the devil. Knowing he had no chance of survival, Nikolai fell to his knees at Dale's feet. Dale looked down at him calmly and repeated Nikolai's own earlier words. "The parties to this contract bear no responsibility for anything that occurs here. That's what you said, wasn't it?" The cardinal could only beg desperately for his life. Dale asked softly, "Do you truly wish to live?" He paused, then continued, "Then what can you offer me?" Trembling, the cardinal lifted his head. What do you want?" "Wealth. I will offer you wealth and an ecclesiastical position. If you wish, you can even command the forces of the church under me. Please, tell me what you want. I will give you everything I possess. Dale laughed lightly. I like the sound of that. Desperate, the cardinal asked again. What exactly do you wish to have? Dale smiled brightly, like an innocent child. Everything you possess. The cardinal tried to object, but it was already too late. Dale had begun rewriting the contract. Bound by an oath, there was no longer any room for Nikolai to turn the situation around. Once Nikolai's matter was settled, the young girl turned toward Dale, calling him Mr. Handsome. She said playing with him had been so much fun. I really liked your world, she added cheerfully. So I'll be waiting for you here. When Dale didn't respond, she tilted her head. Aren't you afraid of me? Dale replied in a gentle, pleasant voice. I'm not. He knew better than anyone that she should never be summoned lightly. Her existence was far too dangerous, power he could not yet fully control. It was not something to wield recklessly. Instead, he decided to keep her as a hidden trump card, to be unleashed only at the final moment. When she asked if they could play like this again someday, Dale stepped closer and answered softly. Of course. We'll meet again. I promise we'll be able to play together. Satisfied with that promise, she smiled and vanished back into her book. Thus, the disturbance in hell came to an end. The eldest son of House Saxon received the acquittal of his sins in the name of Cardinal Nikolai Makia. As both a grand act of atonement and a bridge of reconciliation between House Saxon and the Church, an unprecedented holy ceremony was conducted. On the road back to the ducal territory, Dale was no longer a pilgrim hiding his identity. And for that reason, no one dared to block the blade of the black young master. Several months later, Helmut instructed Charlotte to begin. She acknowledged the order and closed her eyes in concentration. Within moments, the sword she wielded began to glow, coated in aura. After a few seconds, she opened her eyes and said calmly, That will be all. The surrounding soldiers erupted into praise and congratulations. Incredible, young lady! Helmut exclaimed proudly. To think you've already reached such a completed realm of the aura blade at your age! At that moment, Dale appeared behind him and spoke in a firm, authoritative tone. Charlotte of House Orheart, he declared. I, Dale of House Saxon, now ask you, will you, for your lord, for your house's honor, and for all that you are sworn to protect, swear loyalty as my knight? Charlotte drove the tip of her sword into the ground and knelt on one knee. One hand gripped the sword while the other rested over her heart. She swore her loyalty. Dale placed his sword upon her shoulder. Do you swear not to be swayed by selfish desire, but to protect the weak and punish evil? I swear, Charlotte replied without lifting her head. In the name of Saxon, Dale announced, I hereby appoint Dame Charlotte as my knight. And thus, it was declared. After the oath ceremony, Dale and Charlotte walked side by side. Dale turned to her and asked if she was truly certain about her decision. She answered without hesitation, Yes. I like the sword of House Saxon, because that sword is what made you who you are today. Hearing this, Dale couldn't help but admire her. She chose the great sword of House Saxon over a rapier by her own will. That adjustment couldn't have been easy. I may have underestimated Charlotte's talent. To make up for that, Dale offered her something greater. Charlotte, we've received intelligence that a massive orc war band is gathering beyond the Demon King's territory. It seems the orc war boss himself is leading them. Father will personally mobilize the ducal forces and summon the Northern Lords. I'll be joining the campaign as well, and in that battle, I want you by my side. Join me as my knight. Charlotte remained silent for a moment, then accepted wholeheartedly. My blade will be wielded for you alone, she vowed. The Duke later convened a conference with his delegates. One reported, We have detected large-scale southward movement by an orc warband from the Dark Land, part of the Demon King's territory, beyond the northern frontier. Another asked, Could this be the beginning of another wave of barbarian invasions? Most likely, the Duke replied. When the hero Han Sung once joined forces with the Empire to slay the Demon King, many believed peace had finally arrived. In truth, some demon races had merely fled south from the barren Darkland to survive. In later years, this period would be known as the Barbarian Invasions. The Duke continued. Orders have been issued to summon the Northern Lords, the Noir Magic Tower, and all subordinate knightly orders. This battlefield will be on a scale unlike anything before. With that, he turned to Dale, who was also present at the conference, and said it was time to teach him how to utilize necromancy on the battlefield. That afternoon, deep within the underground workshop of the Noir-Duc, the first lesson on battlefield necromancy began. Before teaching anything, Alan asked Dale, "What do you think is the difference between a Death Knight and ordinary undead soldiers? Isn't it the same difference as between a knight and a common soldier?" Dale replied. "Then where does the difference between a knight and a soldier come from?" "I believe it comes from a difference in combat power." Alan shook his head. "Half right, half wrong. Possessing great strength alone does not make one a knight." "Then," Dale asked, "is it the presence of an aura blade?" "That's correct," Alan said, turning toward the corpse of a knight who had fallen in the recent Black and White War. "This aura knight," Alan continued, "swore upon his knighthood to offer his body to House Saxon even in death. The higher his level as an aura knight was in life, the stronger the Death Knight that can be raised from him. Whether alive or dead, remember this, these are knights who possess pride." Alan then gestured for Dale to follow him. There was something he wanted his son to see. They descended a further flight of stairs, moving deeper underground. After a few steps, Alan asked, "Do you know of Frederick, the Immortal Duke, the founder of House Saxon?" Dale remained silent. He did not tell his father that Frederick's grimoire was lodged within his heart. Instead, he replied that he only knew what he had read in books and what his father had told him. Alan nodded. Frederick was a monster in pursuit of truth. He never hesitated to sacrifice even his own daughter. Then his tone grew grave. "What I'm about to show you is what Frederick once pursued, and what House Saxon still owes to this day. The darkness of the old age." At the base of the stairs stood an archway concealed by a thin veil of magic. Alan and Dale passed through it as Alan said, "Only those of the true bloodline who carry Saxon blood may enter." What lay beyond made Dale's jaw drop. Hundreds of dead soldiers stood in absolute stillness, arranged in formation. Dale asked quietly, "What is all this?" Alan explained, "A method of operating the dead without a continuous mana supply. It was the great leap the Immortal Duke achieved long ago. Since then, the heads of House Saxon, generation after generation, have cultivated an army of death known as the Death Order. I, too, continued the will of the Immortal Duke." For some reason, this revelation filled Dale with intense disgust. Everything finally made sense. The reason House Saxon had completely cut itself off from the outside world, and the reason the Noir-Duc, despite wielding dark power, emphasized morality so fiercely. It was all to keep the Death Order safely under control. The realization made his stomach churn. Hypocrisy. Filth. It made him want to vomit. Alan stretched out his arm toward the Death Order. "This is our darkness. And this darkness is also the shield that protects us. Dale, are you prepared to accept it?" Dale's mind was in turmoil, yet outwardly he placed a hand over his heart and answered calmly, "I was prepared from the beginning. Dale of Saxon will accept it willingly, no matter how impure or evil the power might be." He believed that beneath the shell of being a dutiful son, he too was a hypocrite, one who grew stronger for the sake of revenge. Under his father's guidance, Dale began practicing necromancy with the Death Order. He commanded the soldiers to fight one another, honing his control. Alan watched closely, impressed by Dale's extraordinary concentration and refined mana control. Dale turned back and said it was only because he was learning from the best teacher. Still, he admitted that he could not yet control Death Knights without a mana supply the way the Death Order functioned. Alan nodded. "It's too early for that. What I will teach you now is how to use necromancy on the battlefield. Focus your training on the coming battle." With that, Alan summoned the corpses of goblins and ordered them to attack the Death Order. Dale reacted instantly, focusing with absolute precision. Using necromancy alone, He commanded the death order to slaughter every goblin. Alan was deeply impressed. A necromancer's undead were rarely uniform in strength. Most necromancers had never held a sword in life, and their corpses reflected that. But the swordsmanship Dale displayed through the dead far surpassed even that of the living Night Raven Knights. Truly incredible, Alan thought. What exactly is this child's talent? The same thought crossed Sephia's mind. She watched Dale train on the snow-covered grounds, lost in contemplation. What is this feeling? She wondered. That day, Dale pretended to be an innocent child who knew nothing. But through the world of Dale he revealed, it was unmistakable. That chilling cold, that indescribable darkness and desire. Without a doubt, it was the longing of a man who truly craved affection. After observing him for a while, Sephia remarked that Dale's control over water element magic had improved significantly. Dale replied that it was because he had promised his father he would become a son he could be proud of. That's a wonderful resolve, Sephia said. Dale didn't respond. Nor did he act playful as he usually did around her. Noticing this, Sephia asked why he looked so troubled. Dale sighed softly and offered a faint smile before speaking. Teacher, even if you see my ugly side, will you still like me? Sephia was slightly taken aback by the sudden shift. Dale clarified. If one day I accept the dark side of my family, I'm afraid you might be disappointed in me. Sephia gently lifted his lowered face with her palms. Confusion flickered across Dale's expression. Teacher! She said nothing, only gazed into his eyes, filled with deep, unspoken emotion. After a long pause, Sephia finally spoke. An elf's life is long. Even when you grow into a proper man someday, I will probably look exactly the same as I do now. As she said this, she was surprised by herself. Why do I care so much about this child? When stories spread that the black young master had achieved a crushing victory at the black and white turning point, slaughtering every last enemy, the people of the Empire praised Dale's talent and whispered about his infamous reputation. Yet she could never feel truly happy about it. The god of massacre. Dale clearly possessed the kind of talent capable of moving the wheel of history, but she didn't want this child to walk a path paved with slaughter. I will stay by your side until you finally realize your true feelings. And when that time comes, I won't be there as your teacher, but simply as a woman. That's why you are not alone. With that, she turned around and said it was time to begin the lesson. Dale suddenly ran forward and hugged her tightly. Thank you. I really like you, Sephia. So, please wait for me. He spoke with warmth in his voice, entrusting himself to a comfort that made him forget the icy chill in his chest, and even his loneliness. It was a childhood promise he would never forget. Not long after that, the northern lords gathered at the dukedom to confront the barbarian invasions. Under the orders of Duke Saxon, the great lord, small and mid-ranking lords assembled in one place. Of course, among them were nobles filled with ambition, desperate to catch the duke's eye. They all said the same things. One after another, they loudly listed their children's achievements, hoping to be looked upon favorably. Even with a massive battle looming, noble socializing remained a ritual no one skipped. For a great lord, gathering subordinates and strengthening the prestige of one's faction was essential. The northern nobles, and their children, knew exactly who they needed to impress. They crowded around Dale, introducing themselves and showering him with praise. Getting people's attention really is exhausting, Dale thought. But that's politics for you. As the ladies surrounded him, a young man with purple hair approached and said, I've heard that even at your young age you possess martial prowess rivaling that of veteran knights. I wish to witness it with my own eyes. Before Dale could respond, the man's uncle, Helmut, interrupted sharply. Yonez! How dare you? How dare you speak to the young master in such an outrageously rude manner? Dale stopped him. You're the second son of House Kenneth, Sir Yonez, correct? Yonez nodded. You wish to witness my prowess for yourself, Dale continued. So you want to test my ability? Yonez knelt on one knee. With overwhelming talent in both sword and magic, you led the black and white turning point to a decisive victory at such a young age. It said you turned the Knight Order of St. Magdalena into a sea of blood. I was never doubting your ability, young master. I simply wish for you to teach me a few moves with your sword. Helmut tried to interfere again, calling his words insolent, but Dale waved it off and smiled. Sir Yonez, second son of House Kenneth. I've heard you commanded a mercenary unit of 100 men. You set out on a pilgrimage as a wandering knight and built that unit with your own hands from start to finish. Dale understood. As a baron's second son, inheritance under the laws of primogeniture was unlikely. This must have been Yonez's way of proving himself, even if it was a gamble. A wandering knight with no backing who raised a mercenary unit of 100 men could be quite useful. Thus, Dale accepted the duel with a smile. A duel between Dale and the second son of House Kenneth was arranged on the spot. It was the perfect opportunity to establish the pecking order before the war, and Duke Noir had no reason to stop it. As they faced each other, just before the duel began, Dale said, "At the very least, you understand that ordinary swords are different from my sword, yes?" Yonez nodded. He knew of the sword of shadow Dale possessed. "Use your aura," Dale ordered. "Face me with your full strength." Yonez accepted, releasing his aura as he readied himself. Dale observed him closely. He had not yet reached the level where he could wield an aura blade, but his control was exceptionally clean. Dale summoned his sword from the shadows, startling Yonez. "Come at me first," Dale commanded. Yonez leapt forward with all his speed. Dale dodged effortlessly. It was child's play. Yonez attacked again almost immediately, but Dale blocked it with ease. Beneath Yonez's innocent expression lay an ulterior motive. He believed Dale had been born with everything. Now, he wanted to prove that someone with nothing could still defeat someone who had it all. Yonez spotted an opening and lunged forward to seize it. But was it truly an opening he had found, or a trap born from his own blind confidence? He quickly realized his sword had struck nothing but air. Before he could even process it, an attack came from beneath him, and he barely managed to evade it. Shock was written plainly across Yonez's face as shadows beneath his feet erupted into spikes, sprouting farther and farther back with every step he took. All at once, Dale released the spikes toward him. Yonez managed to dodge every single one. His movements are solid, Dale noted. Skills worthy of a mercenary unit captain. At this level, Yonez was a fitting opponent, one capable of proving Dale's name. Dale conjured his dark magic and calmly told Yonez to come at him, declaring that he would not move from that spot. Yonez began to grow flustered, unnerved by Dale's unwavering confidence and casual tone. He raised his sword high above his head and shouted for Dale not to underestimate him. Once again Dale blocked the attack with ease. The onlookers were left in awe, not just of Dale's strength, but of his composure. Yonez retreated from his failed strike and challenged Dale to dodge the next attack, if he could. But before he could execute his plan, Dale struck first, his shadows surging forward. At that moment, Yonez understood. Dale was overwhelming him deliberately, treating him like a child, not to defeat him, but to display his own power. From the beginning, Yonez had never been Dale's true target. The real audience was the northern lords watching the duel, and their children. Yonez couldn't accept being toyed with like this. Gritting his teeth, he launched his next attack faster than any before it. He didn't want to admit it, that Dale's talent was the greatest in the Empire, that it was the very embodiment of the world's unfairness, that further struggle was meaningless. After exhausting every ounce of his strength, Yonez finally knelt, using his sword for support. He accepted his defeat. Dale looked down at him, though his thoughts were elsewhere. Is this thanks to the Book of the Black Goat? The entire fight felt like the world itself was moving in slow motion. To think I could win this overwhelmingly against an opponent going all out with aura. Now, the sword of the Shadow Cloak felt like an extension of his own blood, like controlling a shadow blade with living tentacles. Thanks to his duel with Sir Yonez, he could clearly feel the change. Still, he needed to make an example of him. Dale summoned a shadow bullet and shattered one of his shadow swords. Turning to the crowd, he spoke with an authoritative voice. Is there anyone else who wishes to challenge me? Is there no one left who still has the courage to doubt my name and prove themselves? No one answered. Some even knelt on the spot, swearing their loyalty. Dale recalled a phrase his father often repeated: "Fear guarantees loyalty." It truly was exactly as he said. That night Jonas drowned himself in drink, unable to accept his defeat. No matter how many times he swung his sword, it felt as though he could never reach Dale. The thought stabbed at his mind like a needle. So he chose to numb it with alcohol. Jonas and his mercenaries gathered around a campfire, cursing Dale and the nobility. "Seriously, you should have seen those noble bitches clinging to that 11-year-old brat," one of them scoffed. Another asked what was so special about him. "Married noblewomen going that far, fawning over a kid just to catch his eye. It was pathetic to watch. Come to think of it, does that brat even know how to deal with women?" One of the men laughed. "You're right, Captain. I bet he can't do anything as a man." A calm voice answered from the darkness. "Oh? Really?" They all jumped to their feet, startled by his sudden presence. One of them demanded to know how long he had been there. Dale ignored the question. He calmly sat down on a nearby log and looked at Jonas. "What are you doing? You should be pouring the drinks." Jonas obeyed, sitting beside him and holding up a jug to pour him a drink. As he did, Dale spoke quietly. "The world feels cursed, doesn't it?" Jonas shook his head weakly. "And no, it doesn't," he whispered. Dale continued. "That's simply how the world works. Unfair. Absurd. There isn't a single thing people can decide with their own hands. The natural talent you're born with. The circumstances you grow up in. Is there even one thing among them we can choose by our own will?" Jonas squirmed and answered softly. "No, sir." Dale placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't blame yourself. There's nowhere in this world where you can find a fate we can truly change with our own hands." Jonas laughed bitterly. "Yeah. I think you're right, young master. No matter how hard I struggled, I guess I never had a chance." Dale nodded. "Sir Jonas, second son of House Kenneth, I like you. Would you and your entire mercenary unit be willing to swing your swords for House Saxon, under my command?" Jonas stared at him, as though the words he just heard were nothing more than a drunken hallucination. Jonas asked in disbelief. "Me, under the Saxon family?" Dale replied calmly. "Yes. Before the coming battle, my knights will train you and your men, from how to properly hold the sword to aura techniques, step by step. Instruction from the Night Raven Knights." "Is that really true?" Jonas hesitated. "The one who just taught me how unfair the world is now giving me an opportunity no one else would dare to offer. Why are you doing this much for me?" Dale smiled. "I happen to need someone like you. And you happen to be there. That's how the world works." The world was unfair, but standing before him now, even that unfairness seemed to fade. Some time later, in the meeting room of Saxon Castle, Alan asked his council members to report on the battlefield situation. A vast mountain range lay between the Demon King's territory and the Saxon Duchy. Along the mountain passes, multi-layered fortresses formed tightly linked defensive lines. The knights stationed there had been fighting fiercely to hold their positions. One council member reported. "At present, the defending Ranger Unit Winter Watch, which marched out earlier, has begun retreating from the 9th Mountain Fortress along with the Northern Lords. Before withdrawing, they burned all supplies they could not transport." Alan nodded, satisfied. "Good. Everything is proceeding according to plan. We will continue a staged retreat and wait until the final moment, until the enemy is exhausted near the upper reaches of the Saxon River. Then we will block their main force from crossing and annihilate them." Helmut added. "Then it is about time to deploy the field army." Alan ordered them to inform the lords to prepare for deployment. With that, the meeting concluded and everyone dispersed. As Dale was leaving the room, his father stopped him. "Dale, there is something I need to tell you privately. I will place the mobile strike force, composed of Night Raven Knights, under your command. When the large-scale clashes begin on both fronts, you will lead the strike force. In addition, Lady Cephia will assist you at your side. Dale stared at his father for a moment before speaking. The Blue Tower's stance is not to interfere in worldly conflicts. Alan interrupted him. She is already the chief advisor of our family. Besides, fighting demons can hardly be called a mere worldly conflict. Dale looked troubled. He did not want his teacher to be involved in the war. Is this teacher Cephia's own will? He asked. Yes, Alan replied. Dale, you proved your ability with the victory at the Black and White turning point. I trust you will do well this time as well. Understood, Father, Dale said. There is one more request. Please assign the young divine sword to my unit. Charlotte stood in full armor, making her preparations, when Dale approached her. Truly reliable, he said with a playful tone. Well, I am the escort knight assigned to guard the world-famous Black Prince at his side, Charlotte replied from within her helmet. Dale smiled. Indeed. Then a lingering thought surfaced in his mind. Let's make one promise, he said. Charlotte looked puzzled by the sudden request, but Dale continued without waiting. Don't die. His voice was unusually gentle. Charlotte was about to respond that risking her life was a knight's duty, but Dale stopped her. He said that a knight's true duty was never to betray their lord's trust, and that he did not want her to die. This was not the battlefield where she should fall. Moved though her expression was hidden behind her helmet, Charlotte replied, Yes. I'll engrave it deep in my heart. Some time later, as Orc war bands began marching south, the main army led by the Duke of Saxon set out on its expedition. Meanwhile, Dale, along with Sir Vale, his escort knight Charlotte, and Cephia, personally led the cavalry strike force composed of Night Raven knights toward the upper reaches of the Saxon River, several kilometers away from the Duke's main camp. Here, Cephia was no longer Dale's teacher. At dawn, at the upper Saxon River camp of the mobile strike force, Cephia approached Dale. Dale, you're still awake at this hour. Can't you sleep? Dale answered with a question of his own. Lady Cephia, why did you accept my father's proposal? She smiled softly. I am merely fulfilling my duty. Didn't I promise I would stay by your side? Dale smiled and thanked her. Suddenly, a dull thudding sound echoed, growing louder by the second. Dale immediately warned his men. Prepare for battle. Move to the crossing point at once. He ran toward the edge of the cliff. The orcs were indeed approaching in full force. Damn it. They're striking first, before we can move. Sir Vale rushed to Dale's side and urgently asked for orders. A forced river crossing by thousands of orcs. To risk everything against what was essentially a natural fortress meant their situation was desperate. Dale issued his commands swiftly. Take 4 cavalry battalions and charge the front immediately. Annihilate the orc vanguard before they can establish a bridgehead. I will take the remaining 2 battalions and strike their rear. Vale accepted his lord's orders and hurried off to organize the troops. Thanks to Dale's precise judgment, they were fully prepared as the orcs approached the water. Kill them before they even touch the river! Vale roared to his men. He held his battalions to their assigned positions while Dale led his cavalry in the opposite direction. Hold on just a little longer, Vale, Dale thought as he rode. But the orcs were not the only danger awaiting him. Someone else lay in wait, watching for the moment to strike Dale himself. Near the bridge, the archers took aim at the orcs on the wolves' backs below and fired. They thought they had the high ground, but suddenly the wolves began jumping as high as the cliff and bit an archer's shoulder. This was unexpected, but the enemy had already pushed all the way to the bridge. The soldiers guarding the bridge put in all their might to stop them from advancing further. On the other hand, as the enemy had been on a long forced march, Dale expected their rear support to be cut off already. While Bale held the front, Dale's team pushed upstream through the shallow ford and hit the exposed enemy unit from behind. He prayed for Bale to hold out a little longer. The orcs were killing Bale's men in alarming numbers. But before they could suppress them completely, Dale finally reached them according to his plan. He ordered Bale to push the line forward. Bale announced to his men that the enemies on this side had been isolated, and ordered them to tighten the encirclement with their young master's cavalry. With everyone's collective effort, combined with Dale's shadow bullets, it was not long before they took the orcs down. But an orc tried attacking Dale while he was distracted. His knight in shining armor, Charlotte, was there to rescue him. Cephia informed Dale that if they delayed any longer, there was a chance for the orc unit to pivot their formation. Dale assured her that they would pull out before they began their encirclement. After a while, Bale informed him that the orc riders were turning around, and Dale ordered his team to retreat. They had already achieved their objective. Dale decided there was no need to have an overwhelming victory in every battle. Now, they only had to lure them far enough so their reinforcements couldn't reach them, and then wipe out every last enemy. After a few miles, he decided that this distance was sufficient, and came to a halt. But they were faced with another cavalry whose target was not the orcs, but Dale. As they were about to attack him with fire magic, Cephia intervened in time and blocked it with an ice wall. But the fireball was so powerful that it completely shattered, not melted, but shattered, the ice wall and consumed his men. Dale was baffled at the sight. The fire obliterated everything. Not even a corpse or a single bone was left. Dale immediately ordered his remaining men to spread out, as the enemy tower's purifier had appeared. The men they were now facing were pyromancers. A purifier is a battle mage raised solely to burn the enemies of the Empire and the Red Magic Tower. They enforce the spirit of the age. Cephia, too, suspected that the reason the Red Tower mage had come all the way here was that they were after Dale. Dale ordered his men again to never stop moving or bunch up. This was a worst-case scenario. Forming ranks and attempting a charge was practically suicide because of the overwhelming firepower of the tower mages. At the same time, if they scattered too much and broke apart, the orc riders would pin them down. So Dale had no choice but to use that power. But Cephia interrupted his thoughts and told him to dismount. It was time to fulfill her duty as his teacher. Dale stopped at once and told the rest of the cavalry to carry out his orders as given. He then told Charlotte to inform his father about their situation. She tried to object, saying it was her duty as his knight to keep him safe with her life on the line. But he said it was an order from her lord, which she could not deny. He then told her not to worry and not to loosen the reins even for a moment once they started. Cephia and Dale were the only ones left to face the enemy now. Dale sighed and said they couldn't run now even if they wanted to. Cephia asked, with a hint of surprise, whether he was actually planning to run. Dale said no, with a smile, and asked how he could leave her behind. That was the extent of the conversation they managed to have before the enemy attacked. Cephia released her crystal of ice and froze the oncoming orc riders along with the entire surrounding area. Dale told them coolly that they should have expected this if they were trying to attack a sixth circle mage, the Blue Elder. He asked them their purpose behind collaborating with the demons. One of them aimed the same fireball from earlier at Dale and said they were merely targets for incineration. He released the fireball, which was countered by Cephia's dispel magic, Blue Dissonance. Without delay, Dale ordered the Knights of Saxon to raise their spears and push forward, as the enemy's attacks had been neutralized. He commanded all the remaining forces to attack. On the other hand, Alan, Dale's father, was trying to motivate his knights before they became overwhelmed and lost heart in battle. Young mages, what you face now is not a simple battle. What awaits you is the abyss of the battlefield, mixed with blood, fear, chaos, and despair. Do not cling to victory or defeat, make that chaos and death your nourishment. Hold fear, but do not yield to it. Every death that falls before your eyes today will temper you for tomorrow. Go! Mages who carry the name of Saxon! Engrave today's deaths into your eyes and offer them as power to change tomorrow. After that, he turned to Eris and said that it was time to send the children to the crossing point. Before they could discuss further, Charlotte interrupted and delivered the message that Dale was in danger. As the Knights of Saxon charged toward the enemy, another fireball rolled out from the enemy ranks, and Cephia stopped it with her ice wall. This halted the knights' attack, but it was better than suffering casualties. Once the wall fell, Dale was ready with his next attack. He used the shattered fragments of the ice wall, which formed countless ice spikes, and launched his spell, Shared Magnum. Not a single ice spike reached the enemy, as they held up a barrier using fire magic. That was when Dale noticed the flame armor worn by the enemy and realized it was no ordinary armor. That was how they had endured Cephia's earlier attack. The Knights of Saxon took this opportunity to charge forward again, but the red magic mages were too fast. They rushed through the knights and attempted to reach Cephia and Dale. Dale managed to fire his shadow bullets in time, so swiftly that the enemy could not react despite their speed. One was struck directly in the chest and fell to his knees. Dale demanded to know their true objective behind all this, but the man only smiled and said that soon, this entire world would burn. The world will burn, and from the ashes they will descend. Dale was more shocked by their unusual armor than by his heretical words. It contained self-destructive magic. The armor's purpose was not protection, it was designed to burn their bodies in a suicide blast. Dale panicked and screamed at Sephia to run away immediately. But it was already too late. The mage erupted into flames and blasted everything in the area. The surroundings looked as though they had been struck by a comet. That was the power of the self-destructive armor. Thankfully, Dale realized Sephia had protected him. Just before the explosion, he received her armor of frost and avoided fatal injury. But Sephia herself had been caught in the blast while shielding him. Though her injuries were not fatal, she was unconscious. There was no time for relief. The Knights of Saxon were gone. One of the enemies was still alive and charged at Dale with fire magic. Dale cut through his body like butter, triggering the detonation of his armor as he went up in flames. At that moment, all Dale could think about was how he had been tortured and modified endlessly without a single day of rest. He had endured everything, waiting only for this day. He told the remaining mages not to even think of running, as he prepared to repay the pain he had suffered at their hands. Sephia finally regained consciousness, only to see Dale at the center of the battlefield, surrounded by the enemy. Dale's sword struck one of the enemy's armored jackets, and he burst into flames. The knights she had tried to protect with her own body were burning and collapsing in the blaze. The battlefield was essentially a road to hell. But what suited the word hell even more was the cruel, dark shadow roaming the battlefield. Dale used his wraith transformation and stopped the enemy from self-destructing to kill him and his knights. So they all attacked him at once, relying on their physical strength instead. The pain he had endured and carried became a blade and erupted outward. Once all the self-destructing maniacs were out of his way, one of the enemies standing on the sidelines said that Dale was revenge personified. Dale stood at the center of the battlefield and declared that their mission was a failure, because they would not be able to kill him. An enemy descended toward him and asked, "You're saying you won when your surroundings look like this? Even if the Noir Magic Tower commands death, we are not afraid of mere death. We're prepared to die. I'm ready to sacrifice my body." With a war cry, he leaped toward Dale to self-destruct and take him along. Even after executing it, he found himself still alive. Then a voice echoed, "Despite popular opinion, being prepared to die is easier than one thinks." It was the Duke of Noir, Dale's father. Facing the baffled enemy, he asked, "Is there anyone among you who isn't prepared to die? The act that requires greater courage than the resolve to die is the will to survive." The enemy bellowed that he was talking too much and charged at him. They attempted to self-destruct, but they no longer had their jackets. In any case, they could not die again. Alan asked calmly, "Have you not figured it out yet? I have not given you permission to die. For you, the path of death does not exist here." He cast a curse upon them called Loathsome Fusion, which twisted their bodies and combined them into one large, grotesque mass of living flesh. Alan spoke again. "The act of surviving is hundreds of times more painful and difficult than being ready to die. I will not ask why you chose to side with the orcs and attempted to kill Dale. It is meaningless to demand the truth from those who have already thrown their lives away. Live the rest of your existence in this hideous form." On the other side, a knight on the brink of death begged Dale for permission to carry out his mission even after death. Dale reached out to him with a worried expression and said he understood what he was trying to say. He promised that the Saxon family would never forget their devotion. It was unclear whether the knight heard Dale's heartfelt gratitude before he passed away. Alan approached them and said there had been many casualties. Dale's expression darkened with regret as he said he had no excuse for what had happened. Alan asked if he was trying to blame everything on himself. Dale had led the Saxon knights to their graves. He kept regretting that he had not ordered them to retreat. But his father listened carefully to his feelings and calmly told him not to blame himself too much. "Were you and Sephia planning to take on hundreds of orc knights and purifiers by yourselves?" he asked. He smiled at his son and said that he had done his best. But Dale could not accept that so easily. He told his father about the Saxon knights who had wished to carry out their mission even after death, and he awakened them using his necromancer abilities. "Since the battle is not over yet, please allow the Saxon knights to complete their mission," was all he could ask of his father. Meanwhile, at the Crimson Magic Tower, Marquiures, the same man seen at the banquet, was in his bedroom with a woman. As she woke beside him, he asked whether she had a good dream. She replied that she had, and that everything still felt like a dream. The Marquis poured wine as she spoke shyly. "To think I'm alone with the man famous across the empire for being the most beautiful." He drank the wine himself and said she was exaggerating. When she asked whether she was that charming, he walked over to her and gave her a deep, melting kiss. But the sweetness turned to blood, and the only thing she could taste was iron. The Marquis wiped the blood dripping from the corner of her mouth with his fingers and asked whether she did not like the taste of the drink, revealing his fangs. The orc warboss was filled with rage. Then he began attacking Sir Helmet, but Sir Helmet dodged the blows with remarkable efficiency. When he finally blocked one of the attacks, he understood the situation. "So that's the orc warboss, the one in command. Even after we had wiped out almost all of the orcs, their resistance was still fierce." Then Dale spoke. "Sir Helmet, please fall back. Defeating them is the job of my knights and me." From the rear, the knights he had raised from the dead began moving forward. They charged directly toward the orc warboss. Sir Helmet stared in disbelief. "What in the world is that? That kind of maneuver is only possible through a necromancer's control. I can't believe it. Was young Master Dale's swordsmanship really that good?" As one soldier slashed, the orc suddenly fell silent for a moment. Then it roared. The shout was so powerful that several soldiers were blown off their feet. Sir Helmet sighed heavily. "Everyone, get back! We can't hold on any longer." But Dale calmly walked forward, as he was just aura forming. "Don't worry," he said. Then he began materializing his magic bullets and gauging their speed, 300 RPM. 1000 RPM. 2000 RPM. But even that didn't feel enough. It has to be crueler, more wicked, more horrific. Then suddenly she appeared. The little devil. "Want me to help?" she asked. "It's not your turn yet," Dale replied. "If I make even a single wrong move, we could lose the initiative." He thought to himself, borrowing her power in front of everyone, with all eyes on us, is far too risky. The little devil smiled. "Don't worry. I like your world. I'll never do anything you hate." She giggled softly. "So play with me as much as you like." Suddenly black mana, deep dark mana erupted from Dale's body. From the shadows, glowing eyes opened. It was Shadow Lurker. Shadow Lurker. Dark spikes burst from the shadows. Several of them pierced straight through the orc warboss's head. The monster died instantly. All the soldiers surrounding Dale erupted in cheers. "Young Master has defeated the orc warboss. The one who struck down the leader of the orc horde during this barbarian invasion. The Guardian of the North. The rightful heir of House Saxon. The Black Prince." Amid the infamy and fear that already surrounded him, a new sense of power settled over Dale. Back at the Noir Magic Tower, Dale's father asked quietly, "Did the investigation into the purifiers turn up anything?" "No," the assistant replied. "We tore into the purifiers' brains and interrogated them for 3 days and nights. But most of their brain functions had already been stripped away, including the memory erasure magic." As expected, they had known in advance that Dale would split from the main force and move with the cavalry. That meant only one thing. There was an insider on our side. Someone had issued the purifiers detailed orders ahead of time, down to the exact moment of Dale's movements. "Do you suspect anyone?" the assistant asked. "Monsters of truth," Dale's father replied. The assistant looked startled. "You're saying the hardline elders of the Noir Tower are cooperating with the Crimson Magic Tower?" Dale's father spoke calmly. "Have you already forgotten the activities of the Black-Red Enforcer Unit?" The Black-Red Enforcer Unit had been an official organization formed during the Empire Unification War between the Noir and Crimson Magic Towers for joint academic inquiry. After the war ended, the unit was dissolved and its records erased. Under the rule of the Duke of Noir, the Tower chose several times to sever itself from the darkness of the old era. But some hardliners believed even the unforgivable atrocities of the Black Cavalry were justified in the pursuit of truth. Those very monsters rejected the Duke of Noir's system and joined forces with the Crimson Magic Tower. So the winds of purging will blow once more, Dale's father concluded. Meanwhile, inside the underground workshop of Duke Noir, they were knights who trusted me and followed me, he said. They stood by my side even in the face of death, and eventually they passed away. As their lord, I have a duty to honor their wishes. He looked at his father. Tell me how to raise the dead order. Dale's father silently observed him. With the potential this child has shown, if he someday stands at the very apex of the Noir Magic Tower in my place, how free will he truly be from the darkness that even I cannot escape? Finally, he spoke. Someday, when you grow stronger and surpass me, when you reach the apex of the Noir Magic Tower, the army of darkness will naturally become yours. Dale understood the ominous meaning behind those words immediately. To defeat the one who stands at the apex of the Noir Magic Tower, the continent's greatest dark mage. With my own hands. Then Dale said, Father, here and now, may I challenge my teacher to a duel? What will be the conditions of the match? His father asked. The apex father spoke of. I want to know what kind of realm it truly is. Please fight at full strength, Dale said. His father nodded. Come at me with everything you've got. Dale raised his hand. Arise, Saxons. Black swords. 2 fallen soldiers were revived through necromancy. Dark magic flowed through their bodies as they charged toward his father. His father nodded in approval. Your incarnation is remarkably clean. When they attacked, he merely dodged slightly as if he wasn't even serious. If we attack together, you won't be able to avoid it, Dale said. Then he activated Shadow Lurker. Dark spikes erupted from the shadows beneath the ground. At the same time, the 2 resurrected soldiers and the Shadow Lurker attacked simultaneously. 3 attacks at once. But suddenly, everything stopped. In a duel between dark mages, his father said calmly, losing control of your shadow creatures is more fatal than anything. That was when Dale realized something horrifying. His shadows were under his father's control. A memory flashed through Dale's mind. It's just like back then. Darkness always flows toward what is deepest and thickest. In that case, I'll focus my mind just like I did that time. Then in a fraction of a second, one of the knights suddenly moved. Its blade slashed cleanly through Dale's father's neck. His head fell to the ground. Dale froze in shock. Father! Then the severed head spoke. Truly astonishing. Dale couldn't understand what was happening. His father's head was lying on the ground, yet it was speaking. To think you would take back control of death from me. What on earth is happening? Dale stammered. His father replied calmly. Didn't I tell you? I don't permit death. And then Dale understood. No way. Reality manipulation. Magic is the power that turns imagination into reality. But the human mind is imperfect. Never omniscient. Never omnipotent. Yet at the pinnacle of magic, it becomes possible to manipulate the very laws of this world through one's spoken will. When it came to the purifiers, did he erase the very concept of death itself? Dale slowly realized the truth. From the very beginning, this was a match I could never have won. All he could do was laugh. Some time after stopping the great demon migration, a messenger of the Emperor arrived to commend the Saxon family. He announced, amid the chaos of the demon migration, His Majesty has expressed great satisfaction with the loyalty and resolve shown by the Saxon family. Alan thought, satisfaction rather than gratitude. Messenger continued, especially, despite his young age, the brilliant achievements of the Black Prince have clearly reached the imperial court. To commend these accomplishments, and at the same time to foster an exchange between the Black Tower and the Red Tower, we would like to invite the young master of the Saxon family to the Red Tower Academy in the imperial capital. Both of them were shocked by the invitation. Alan immediately objected. It's too dangerous. Sending you to the imperial capital now is far too risky. Are you planning to walk into a death trap with your own feet? Dale responded calmly. The son of Marquis Uris has also agreed to stay at the Black Tower as part of the exchange. Since we are effectively holding a Red Tower noble here, they won't act rashly. His father frowned. Have you forgotten the Purifier's attack? Dale replied. If they attempt to harm the Black Duke's heir in the imperial capital, especially within the Red Tower Academy, Even the blooded duke would understand the consequences that would follow. From the Empire's perspective, the one they fear most isn't me. It's my father. Then how do you explain the Purifier's attack? His father pressed. Dale answered, the Red Tower was likely testing both me and you. Marquis Yuris was probably curious about the extent of my power. If they truly intended to eliminate me, they wouldn't have stopped at just 12. His father narrowed his eyes. Then do you have any other objective in going to the Imperial capital? Dale said, I want to see the Empire with my own eyes. And since the Red Tower has thrown down a challenge, it is only right to respond. His father let out a sigh. I can never fully understand the way you think. You're right. Perhaps, as a father, I overlook what the Black Duke would not. He paused before adding firmly, very well. But remember this: the moment you set foot in the Imperial capital, they will see you as nothing more than a mere child. Dale smiled faintly. I will remember that for my father, for myself, and for the Saxon family. Elsewhere, Marquis Yuri smiled to himself. I look forward to our reunion. After all, youth is driven more by curiosity than fear. He turned his gaze elsewhere. Elizabeth, what do you think? Because you never thought of yourself, you ended up rotting like this. Still, your blood was truly excellent. His expression darkened slightly. Death is a blessing, like a flower that blooms brilliantly and fades beautifully. Compared to that, a life of immortality without death is empty, fleeting, and meaningless, like a weed that will never bloom in its lifetime. A faint smile appeared on his lips. Welcome, young Master Dale, the greatest talent of the Empire, the one who might ease this emptiness. Dale was en route with Gale and his teacher. Lost in thought, he reflected, since showing that side of myself, I can't bring myself to speak freely. After seeing what I was like back then, I know it's not something that can be brushed aside with an apology or excuse. Soon, they arrived at the Imperial capital. Welcome. The young master of the Saxon family has made the long journey. This is the Imperial Academy affiliated with the Red Tower. We have been waiting for you. The man stepped forward. I am Marquis Yuris. It is an honor to see you again. Dale responded politely. I should be the one deeply grateful for the Red Tower Lord's invitation. Yuris smiled. I have heard much of your exploits during the Great Demon Migration. Not merely remaining a scholar, but boldly choosing to become a warrior on the battlefield. Your glorious deeds are spreading throughout the Empire. Dale kept his expression calm. The man who joined hands with demons, who turned the Saxon knights to ashes, is standing right in front of me. But I must endure, for now. Yuris continued, whenever tales of the Black Prince reach us through eager storytellers, I can't help but be amazed. Dale replied evenly, stories told by people are often exaggerated. Yuris chuckled. Oh no, not at all. A talent hailed as the greatest in the Empire naturally invites high expectations, from both us and the Academy. Soon, Dale stepped forward and greeted the gathered nobles. Dale of the Saxon family respectfully greets the members of the Imperial Court. They were visibly surprised by his proper manners. But Dale was merely enduring, keeping his anger buried deep inside. I must wait, for the right moment. For the sake of the Saxon family. For now. I will sit at their table. But one day, I will make them kneel. Yuris watched him closely, a faint smile forming. How interesting. Young Master Dale. Eyes burning with bloodlust. Very good. I look forward to seeing your talent. Classes began at the Academy. One professor explained, in other words, the fire and water elements are opposites of each other. Dale listened with little interest, clearly bored by the topic. From behind him, whispers began. That's him, right? The Black Prince. They say he reached the third circle at just 11 years old. That has to be a lie. No way some brat from the remote Black Tower in the north is third circle. His circle rotation doesn't even look like it reaches 100 revolutions per minute. Dale remained silent. Yuri's that sly bastard. Of all places, he placed me in the top third circle class. A few weeks have passed since I arrived here, and now the graduation exam is approaching. Graduating from the Imperial Academy and becoming a Red Tower mage was essentially a guaranteed path to success among the Imperial nobility. Because of that, the students did not welcome the presence of an outsider. Nothing serious had happened yet, but Dale knew one thing for certain: Yuri's didn't send me here just to attend lectures. A student raised his hand. Professor. The professor looked over. Yes? What is it? It's just that, This class is too boring. The professor blinked. Is that so? I apologize. Then what would you suggest? The student smirked. Since the Black Tower and the Red Tower are conducting an exchange, and the young master of the Saxon family is here, shouldn't we have a proper mage exchange to match it? The professor hesitated. By mage exchange, you don't mean? The academy functioned like a small kingdom. Rank was determined by bloodline and title. And at the very top stood a king. Dale observed the speaker. This guy, he must be the king. Most likely the son of Walter Flameblood, an elder of the Red Tower. The student, Leonard, continued, that's what everyone says, isn't it? He passed the 20th floor in the tower test, led the black and white campaign to victory, and is called the Empire's greatest genius. And recently, he even defeated the Orc War boss, alone, right? A faint grin appeared on his face. That's exactly why I want to see his talent for myself. Dale replied calmly, rumors always get exaggerated, so you want to confirm it yourself. Leonard's eyes sharpened. Your words certainly match your reputation. But anyone can act like a hero with words alone. Show it through your actions. Young master. Dale met his gaze without hesitation. Very well. I accept. And just like that, a duel between Dale and Leonard began. The professor quickly intervened. Dale, you understand the rules of exchange magic, correct? Leonard scoffed. So arrogant for someone from the Northern Black Tower. This is the Imperial Academy, the top third circle class. His voice hardened. I will make you kneel before me, the Empire's greatest talent. Dale turned to the professor and asked calmly, will it be fine without a life point necklace? The professor froze. A life point necklace. Dale continues, if a casualty occurs during this exchange, and someone loses their life, who will bear the responsibility? His voice turned colder. Are we truly allowed to use magic with the intent to kill? The professor's face paled. Leonard, this match is cancelled. I'm cancelling it. Leonard was stunned. Professor, wait, the professor pleaded, Leonard, please. Let's pretend this never happened. Or at least wear a life point necklace. Leonard's expression darkened with anger. I don't need something like that to defeat this brat. He shoved the professor aside. Just stand back and watch. I'll show you what a real exchange looks like. Dale spoke again, his tone steady. How long do you plan to hesitate, Leonard? Leonard smirked. I'm ready, young master of the North. But I'd like to add one more condition. If you lose, you will be deemed unqualified for the graduation class starting today. You will leave this class. He paused before adding, if I lose, I will give up taking the graduation exam. He spread his arms slightly. A fair exchange. What do you think? Dale accepted without hesitation. Agreed. They both activated their magic. Leonard conjured a blazing chain of fire. The duel began. They lunged at each other, Dale with his dark sword, Leonard with his flaming chain. The pressure alone was overwhelming. The surrounding students couldn't even follow their movements with their eyes. Dale quickly gained the upper hand. His sword struck. Leonard barely blocked it with his chain, but the force pushed him back. Dale didn't give him a moment to recover. He lunged forward again. This ends it. Just as Dale was about to land the finishing blow, a sudden attack struck him from the side. A blast hit his face. The classroom fell silent. Dale slowly rose. There was no damage. His eyes turned cold as he looked toward the source. You coward! You brought your group? His voice was sharp. Is this the exchange you were talking about? Leonard let out a dry laugh. Cowardly? I have no idea what you mean. He glanced around. It seems, no one here is particularly fond of your presence, young master. Then his gaze shifted to the professor. And professor, don't even think about speaking of today's events elsewhere. His voice dropped dangerously. The moment this reaches my father's ears, your position will be over. He turned back to Dale. Now then, shall we begin again? A duel to determine true talent. Dale exhaled softly. Let's stop the duel here. If we stop now, this can still be treated as a mistake. Leonard laughed mockingly. Ha! You still don't understand the situation, do you? Dale's expression remained unchanged. No. You don't. He looked around the room. Look carefully. Dale activated his mana. In an instant, it spread across the entire classroom. The atmosphere shifted. The students froze. What? My mana. It's disappearing. Their magic was being suppressed, completely overwhelmed. Dale's voice echoed coldly. Pathetic. He looked directly at Leonard. A Red Tower mage shouldn't let his own flames be extinguished so easily. If you like this recap, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more awesome manhwa stories.